And we are live. Look at that. How about that? And it all seems to be working. Hello, everyone. If you are watching this on the replay, you can fast forward about 14 minutes to the actual start where there might be something to watch. Let's do some camera checks, shall we? Let's do that one. We just did that one. That one we know works. This one we know works now. Let's see if that is available. Yes, it is. And I should have this up on the screen. There we go. So there we are. Hey, it works. Nice. All right, let's tell the chat room that we're doing stuff. There we go. Chat room, we are doing stuff. All right, and if you are watching this live, there is a chat room specifically for the live event where I will be watching this. It is called Live Event Chat. I know. That's what I called it. All right. We have vocals zoned up. I have my spray right here. We have a warm beverage. Battle station is set. I can see stuff up on the screen. You can't see the stuff I see on the screen, but I can see the stuff on the screen. It's effectively the same stuff that's here behind my head, but I can't see that because it's over there. What I really need to do is get that up on top of the monitor that's in front of me, which would be great if I could just have that little monitor. I need to find out how to do that. All right, everybody. All right, lazy web. Find out how I stick this 17-inch display on top of my iMac. I don't really think it can be done. I think I would have to create something that would go around that and sit up there. These are the things I think about when I am doing this. I'll be watching the live event. Yeah, maybe duct tape. Do it. For those interested. Maybe it would, Jerry. I think you're onto something. Just tape it up there. It'll look great. How much badly can that be? Stefan, hola. ¿Cómo está? You know, I think that actually would work. Actually, no, it wouldn't work. You know why? Because there's lights. You know, you don't see it in this shot. There are lights to my left and right, and if I stuck that up there, it would just be right in the way. So really, I could just get rid of it. It's a monitor I need. Well, I sometimes, in front of me, you'd see the very bottom of it is like a 60-inch television that is just up there in the air. And it's on a stand. I can roll it around so I can put it anywhere. The idea is that at some point I might want to stick it over my shoulder. So in this shot, you would have, I'd be off to the side and you would see a monitor there and I could put things on the monitor, which I could do. I just have not done that. But that was the idea, is that I would have a monitor I could move around. It's on a stand. I can move it up and down. I can roll it around the place. When it's not being used for the study group, it is my Xbox One display. So the priorities are clearly in place. So that's the Destiny machine. But I move it around. I don't want to sit here in my chair and with the Xbox controller. That's an enormous Xbox controller. Did you see that? It's huge. So I roll it around to the side and I just spin around when I do that. I've been preoccupied lately with Diablo. So anyway, enough about me and the work I'm not doing. And it's actually exciting times. There's a ton of things happening right now. An enormous set of things happening right now. So we're in a very busy time of content creation and the things that are going on. One has to see about that. All right. Yes, it's season 4 of Diablo. I do like the seasonal part. I do like going through a season. I know there's a start time and a start and a stop time. I think I like that aspect of it. And unfortunately they've done a very good job at creating these things, these steps along the way for the achievements, and it just sucks you in. But I'll get an hour a night in. Last thing, sneak an hour in there. Okay, and it was a busy week because they released the new 900 series exam objectives, which we will be discussing in the after show. And I've gone through them completely and mapped them out and created an outline and actually have shot video of them. So it's all good. That's what the busy part is right now, is building out that 901 and 902 material, which of course the test isn't even available yet. So I'm busy churning through all of this. So when they finally say, yes, we have an exam, I'll be able to plop, at least a part of a course out there. Hopefully the whole thing. Maybe I can really get this going. I was recording video yesterday, Monday and Tuesday. So I've got a lot of video that's sitting in the can waiting for the post-editing. Post-editing? For post-production. And got to edit and get that rendered down. And of course, I'm changing a lot of things with it. There's sort of a new style to what I've got here. So you've got kind of a different perspective on the content. What's a little bit familiar and it's a little bit new. So there's some exciting things happening. And that's not the only thing. There's more stuff going on. Can't tell you. I can just tease you and say, yes, there are more things going on. So that's what that's about. Okay, we've got, Steve, the things I fix in post. Yeah, we do use Socrative today. It's already up. You can see I've got Socrative on the screen. Where's my head? There it is. www.socrative.com. Go to the student login, and it's the room Professor Messer. ProfessorMesser. I wish there was a way I could just click and boom, it puts you in the room. There might be. Somebody figure that out. This is me. I'm delegating these days. I'm Mr. Delegator. I'm sure there's a way to do that. Someone please figure it out. Because I'm heads down. When you're in this mode of creating the videos, I go through and I create the content first. All the presentations are done. And then I go back, I create course notes from them, and then I actually shoot the video. So I'm now in the shooting the video mode, and it's just constant video. I have terabytes and terabytes of video that have not been edited, that are just sitting on a SSD and drives, because I shoot them and then they get copied off to multiple backup locations. And then I go back when I have time to do the editing, when I have time. Because, I have time. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, what time is it? When are we doing this? It's a little cool in here. Let's switch this up a bit. Let's adjust the cooling here from my mobile device. Oh, it just turned off, of course. Of course it did. Let's make it a bit warmer. It's hard to tell because I just got the lights turned on, and although they are LED, they still put out a little bit of warmth. Okay, tweets have gone out. Facebookings have gone out. Oh, you know what we haven't done is a quality assurance test of the audio. So I have no idea if this even sounds good. It might sound like a Cylon. I don't know. By your command. I don't think they sound like that, though. Let's see if I do this, if I play this, what's it going to sound like? So I have no idea if this even sounds good. Well, it sounds fine. What am I worried about? Absolutely nothing. Say it once more. There is A lot of questions today, too. I should probably close this. That looks good. We're going to record the pre-show right now. Oh, you know what I haven't done? I don't even know if I have room to record on this. How much space do I have on this? I have my backup recorders here, and I don't even know if I have the room. Let's find out. Let's plug those in. Let's see the lights. It's reading them. Let's see how much space we got. We got 3.5 minutes before this thing starts. So this is the perfect time to, do maintenance, check on size of drives, set up a backup. I already have one backup going here. Of course, I'm going to a backup. Nope, not enough room, so we won't be using that. That's the thing. I have 2 terabytes of SSD right there, and both terabytes are full because of the videos we're doing. So that's the way it works. Okay, 3 minutes, Mr. Sinatra. Some nice people letting me know that the Twitter is working. How about the Book of Faces? Did it go out? Is there a thing on there? There is. Look, it's a pretty picture. Pretty. That's nice. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. So now it's just a matter of, doing this. Put the graphics up. We've got... All right. Yeah, that's a pretty good time to do that. Let's do a BIOS update right now. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll work. Hello, chat room. Hello, Michigan. Hello, Sofan. Ahmed, Kad, Kaburian, and Brian, and Kelly, and Paul W. I see. Where's my magic mirror? I see Kelly. I see Brian. I see Sofan. Minute and a half. So with that, is there anything else I need to do? I think we're ready. Oh, the things that are going on outside the studio right now. Can't even hear it, but there's a lot of activity. There are things are afoot at the Circle K. Let's bring up a keynote. Let's get this automation going. Be good if I talk to you. Play. Nice. Nice. Well, this will be the beginning of like 6 weeks in a row of study groups because I'm moving them up for November and December because of the holidays. So I'm going to be doing 3 this month, and then we aren't even skipping a week. We're doing 3 more. So if you get your Q&A in now, just wait 3 weeks or so, and you're going to get another one because the dates are moved up. And I can't see the chat. There it is. Yes, that's the way it works. I can't have a study group without a romper room reference. It's a pretty good descriptor of my house. All right. Best I can do is hum, and I'm always worried even humming that it's going to get caught in the filter somewhere. Enough of this. Let's begin the study group. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2015 Professor Messer A+ Study Group. This is our monthly study group where I ask you a bunch of questions and we see if you're able to answer them. And we do it all online, so I know what you're answering, and I usually will try to stick a question or two in there and really make you think. And we'll go through a number of those things in the first hour. In the second hour, I will be talking about whatever you'd like to talk about. I'll open up the phone lines. You'll be able to call in on our toll-free number anywhere in the world with Skype. or with a standard telephone. If you're in the United States, you can use the 800 number. There is also new news from CompTIA on the 900 series exam objectives, which were released. The exam's not available, but they snuck the exam objectives out. We're going to talk about that in the second hour, right at the beginning of the after show. So if you're interested in the 900 series, this would be a really good time to go through and hear what I have to say, because I have outlined everything. I have gone through with a fine-toothed comb. And let me tell you, it's hard to find a fine-toothed comb in my house, but I managed to find one, and I went through the exam objectives. For those of you that haven't seen one of these study groups before, this is it. This is my monthly Q&A. I want to thank everybody for your support throughout the month. If I didn't have folks that were supporting me with my course notes and with my offline courses, we wouldn't be able to do this. So thank you so much. There is also this phone line I mentioned. In the second hour, I will turn on and enable this phone line at 1-800-785-RJ45. We will also, I want to mention that if you like the videos, you may want to consider subscribing on YouTube. I've got a lot of videos that are in post-production right now. I was talking about that during the pre-show. And you can watch when I put them out there at professormesser.com/YouTube. I also put things out on Twitter. And when I Instagram things, I also copy it to Twitter. So you can also follow on Twitter and Instagram and Google+. Just type in professormesser.com/aplace, and hopefully you'll be able to get there. So that's a good way to do it. Also, GTS Learning has discounted vouchers for us, 10% off. So don't take your exam and pay full price. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers. These is also, if you already have your A+ or even your Network Plus or Security Plus, some of these pieces of information apply as well. This is something you might want to gather continuing education units. If you're looking to renew your certification, you can find out more at this very, very, very long URL. CompTIA just updated their entire website. And in the process of doing that, extended the length of the URLs by about 700%. So I think the easiest way to do this is just go to the Google machine and type in continuing education CompTIA. You'll get there. You'll see this page. The important part is that I can give you 1 CEU per hour of this webinar. It's really 1 hour's worth. And you can see if you have the A+ certification, you can get a maximum of 4 CEUs out of watching these study groups, whether it's live or whether it is recorded. Sometime during this study group, I will give you a secret code word, and you will need to send me that code word. That's how I know that you actually watched the study group. So you have to listen, write it down. You'll go to the top of my website or to the bottom of my website. There are contact us links in both places, and you can send me that information. I'll talk more about that when we get there. So there's a lot going on here. I mentioned earlier about the changes that are coming to the A+ certification, but they're not here yet. Currently, the A+ certification is the 800 series. I have all of my videos available for you to watch absolutely free online, but if you do want to take my videos offline, I have a version of that you can purchase, and you can find out more about that at professormesser.com/download A+. This also includes MP3 audio, which you don't get online, all my slides in PDF format, which you don't get online, and transcripts, closed captioning, which you do get online. So a little bit of combination there. If you're someone that maybe English isn't your first language, or I'm not talking English for whatever reason in my video, you can turn on the closed captioning and see exactly the word that I'm talking about. And contiguous is a word. Just for those of you sending me emails and looking at the A+ certification materials, I'm not making the word up. I don't mean continuous. It is contiguous. And you can look at the transcript and see if it's even written properly. I don't even know if it is. I send these videos off to a service where a human being does type in all the transcripts, and I'm wondering, did they get contiguous right? So we're going to have to, that's a research for next time. We'll figure that out. I will talk all about the 900 series exams in the chat room. I've stirred up the ant pile. I will be talking about the 900 series exam and everything we know about it in the second hour. So how's that for a tease? Because we have questions to go through. If you'd like to participate and answer the questions that I give you, go to Socrative.com. Pop open a new window, go out to Socrative.com, and you want to log in as a student, and you want to go to room Professor Messer, all one word. The important part is that you have exactly that name spelled that way. Otherwise, you'll be in a room where nothing is going on. And if you go to that room, you'll see something like this, where it will prompt you for a question that says, how long have you been studying for your A+ certification? And I can see 30 people are in there already. So you can go and answer the question right there. I will be also watching the chat room if anybody has any questions about it. And usually there's somebody in there that can help as well. I see a number of you are even sending me private messages. I'm sorry I'm not able to respond to you at the moment. I have something going on. I don't know what that's about, but that's probably somewhere in there. So see if you can answer that question. How long have you been studying for your A+ certification? Socrative also has apps for your iOS, Android, Windows Phone. I think they even have an app that runs in the Chrome browser, which is kind of nice. So it's Socrative.com. Into room name Professor Messer. You can see it right there. Click that student login. Don't click the teacher login. That's my login. You can't get in there. You have to go to the student login. And if somebody would be nice enough to put that in the chat room, that would be delightful. And now 7 people will put it in the chat room. That was you ask for one thing and you get 10 of them. But that is where you need to go, right there on the screen. And if you do that, boom, we've already got 57 people now that are in there answering the question. And you can see this is about what we will see is we have a large group of people just starting out in that 3 to 6 month time frame. I would say that's probably the average time frame for many people taking the A+ certification. And then you've got these other time frames. More than 9 months is me. I already have my A+ certification. I guess that's technically me as well. But those are two very good ways to do that. With those pieces. You know, one of the things that I do is I try to put these questions up and then we'll go through them and see what the answers are. And there's a lot to go through. I've got a large number of questions to break through on this one, and we're going to go through them today. I want to go through all of the questions we have available. Before we do that, let's do a quick review because I have been talking about the A+ certification and the 900 series. The 900 series exam isn't here yet. The 800 series is what you're taking right now. And that is exactly where we're focusing today is the content that's on the 800 series exam, which is going to be around not only now, but for many, many months to come. So if you're studying for the 800 series exam, keep studying. You got plenty of time to take this exam and pass it. And I'll talk more about that in the second hour. This is the topics on the 801 and 802, everything from PC hardware and networking and laptops and printers and operational procedures for the 801. We will also today be doing questions from the 802 for operating systems, security, mobile devices, and troubleshooting. So there's quite a bit to get into, to work through with those pieces. So we're going to go through those questions and try to step through some things that maybe you would have questions about. Let's start with one that everybody is asking about, because this is one that's a popular request, which is all about the command line. So the question is, which of these can terminate an application at the command line? So there's got to be options here as well. So let's see what those options might be. They are task kill, net stop, kill, service stop, and halt. It's got to be one of those, right? One of those is going to be able to terminate an application at the command line. If you think you know the answer, go to Socrative.com, log in with the student login, and choose the room Professor Messer. Make sure you spell that Professor Messer, one word, and do not answer in the chat room. That's not nice. So one of the things that I like to do with these questions is get you thinking about the answers themselves and figuring out what are the next steps to be able to do this. And I think this is an important one because a lot of people want to deal with the performance-based questions that you may be asked. This is not a performance-based question. I'm simply asking you a multiple choice question. But we could easily ask this as a performance-based question. It could be a fill in the blank. So you could say, which of these, what command can terminate an application at command line? And you need to fill in the blank. More likely, a command line question is going to prompt you at a command prompt, and it's going to say, terminate this application. And then you have to actually type in the command to terminate the application. So in a way, that's a little bit more difficult. I think that could certainly be a little bit more of a challenge. But you do need to know these commands. And there are quite a few on the 800 series, the 802 exam. There's no command lines on the 801. All of the commands are on the 802. That will change on the 900 series quite dramatically. So enjoy the 800 series while you can. Let's see how we did with this one. This is a good one to jump off with to see how we did. How did we do with this? Well, it looks like 62%, if we had to go with the majority, have said task kill is the proper termination for command. Is it net stop? 13% said net stop. I guess number 2 is really kill. The kill command is 19% of you. Only 5% said service stop, and only 1% said halt. So what is the correct answer to this one? How would you manage applications at the command line? Well, you do that with task list and task kill. Those are the two answers, really just one answer, but those two commands that really help you manage the applications and how they are running. And you can do this all at the command line. You can do it from a remote machine into somebody else's machine. So you can log into a third-party machine across the network, list out all the applications that are running on that machine, and then kill the applications without actually being at that workstation. So this can be really useful for network management. When somebody calls and says, I'm having a problem with this app, everything is stuck on the screen, what can I do? You still may be able to administer things over remotely, not even at that person's desk. The one that shows you the tasks that are running is aptly named task list. This shows you a big list of different options, of different applications that are running, and you can manage those either on your local machine or, as I mentioned, from a remote device. To get rid of an app, you're ready, the app is going to go away. We will use the task kill command, and we would be able to specify the task by something called a PID, which is a product or process ID rather. The process ID is going to tell us which specific application it is. Whenever an application starts up, it's assigned a process ID, a very unique process ID. So you could start up 20 different instances of Notepad, and you could specify exactly which one of those you would like to stop by specifying the process ID. You could also specify it by executable name as well. Kill everything that is Notepad, and it would kill all those. So that's another way that would be used with something like this. I think whenever we start looking at command line and working with things at command line, we sometimes can get overwhelmed. So it's important to know what these commands are, and they list out all of them in the objectives for the A+ certification. So don't worry about not understanding exactly what's going to be asked of you, because they tell you exactly the commands you'll need to know. So you'll have a very good idea of what to study. So the question really was about terminating an application to the command line. In our particular case, those 65% of you that answered task kill got that absolutely right. There are other commands here that do things like net stop that can stop services and other things that might be on your system, but we're talking about terminating an application, and the only command here that does that is task kill. Very nice. Well done, everyone. So let's now take that focus that we had on the task kill, and let's move it over into something more hardware related. So this one is more straightforward. In fact, this is more of a kind of a performance-based question, because we're giving you the picture of something that says, what connector is this? Now, in this particular case, I didn't leave this as a fill in the blank. But you might be given a number of different connectors. Maybe you have to match them up, or maybe you have to see what fill in the blank for multiple connectors. You should be able to look at these connectors and know what they are. All of the connectors that you'll find in your computer are unique. They're designed that way so that you can't plug one thing into another. I guess that's not entirely true for the PS2 connectors, but that is the same idea anyway. The options you have on here is this one here. And remember, no answering in the chat room. We can have, for this connector, and you can blow that up and have a look at it on your screen, is it PCIe power? Is it SATA data? Is it a Molex connector? Is it SATA power, or is it CPU power? Sounds like it's either power or data, isn't it? It's one of those things. It's something on the inside anyway. At least we know that. If you think you know what the answer is, no answering in the chat room, go to Socrative.com. You can answer there. You can find out and tell everyone how smart you are in Socrative.com. Click on the student login, go to Professor Messer. So that's one of those things that I think would be really useful for looking at these. I think that's one where going through these pieces is going to be the most important part of it. And I think that's where whenever I'm looking at what these are, that's what I want to know is how are all these different connectors configured and what are they doing? There is a number of different connectors you need to know, not just for power, but for data, for connectivity, for networking. There's a lot you need to know. And you need to know just as many for the Network Plus, it seems. Network Plus very focused on the network connectors. The A Plus really focuses on everything, networking, hardware, peripherals, inside your computer, outside your computer. Let's see how we did on this one. You can see PCIe power got 58% of the vote. The Molex connector, 21%. It's a popular connector, that Molex. CPU power, 16%. And SATA power only got 6. SATA data, nobody chose SATA data, 0%. The poor SATA data didn't have a chance, did it? This connector is one that's very common to use for PCI Express. This is where you would add additional power. And the real secret on this one is that you have a choice for PCI Express to use both 6-pin power and 8-pin power. And there's 2 different power connectors for that. Although in many cases, you can use one like this that has the power connector itself can be used in either one of those. That's why I showed it this way. So you can see it's modular. Can't see the other side because of my big head in the way. But there's the idea is that you can break off a couple of those and use it on a 6-pin or stick it together and use it on an 8-pin. So you probably have this if you've ever built a computer and you've put in an external video card. That's where you really end up using these, is on the external video card. You're plugging it in, and the external video card needs a lot of power, much more power than it would ever get from the PCI Express slot on the motherboard. So you really need these external power. And believe me, the manufacturer of the video card will tell you, you must plug in this power connection. It might have a single 6-pin. It might have an 8-pin. It might have 2 6-pin connectors. So you're going to have to run 2 cables for power into the video card just to get things going. I think that's a good way to power and have these things running. Your video card won't work unless you're going to provide it this power. And most video cards will give you a lot of different options to plug it in. I plugged in a number of these, and they do provide the power you need to get that video adapter going. So if you are one of the people that answered on this one, PCI Express power, you're one of the 58%. You got that one absolutely correct. It is not SATA power. It's not SATA data. So those are not true. It's not a Molex connector on these pieces, and it's not CPU power, although it looks very familiar to the same interfaces, the same connector you might use for CPU power. But CPU power is going to use those. There is an 8-pin CPU power that you do have to watch for. That's one thing you do have to know between these two. That's why I showed it with the 3 and the 1, the 3 rows or the 3 columns and the 1 column broken out. But they don't fit into the same interface, though. They're keyed differently. So this connector will only fit into PCI Express. It won't fit into anything else in your computer. So that's one thing you do have to know is if you're trying to plug it in and you're pushing it and you're realizing, hey, this is not going into there, don't shove it into an interface. Everything on your motherboard should slide in very easily. You don't want to bend the motherboard. You don't want to apply pressure to the motherboard. You don't want to do any of those things. So make sure you're very careful about that. If you're one of the people that answered A, PCI Express power, you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's do another one. Let's move on to another question that is specific to something. I don't want to give too much away, but the answer is this, or the question is this: in which of these cases would you be most likely to use a degaussing tool? One of these is going to be a good reason that you would degauss. So what would that reason be? Well, it's one of these. It is to identify the location of a network drop. It's to remove all information from a storage device. It's to verify the voltage of a wall outlet. It's to perform a site survey of a wireless network, or it's to reset a mobile device to factory defaults. One of these would be the case where you would be most likely to use a degaussing tool. And if you think you know how to do this, go to Socrative.com, click on the student login, and go to room name Professor Messer for those of you that are just joining us and you're wondering, how do I answer these? That is how you answer these. And everybody's in there answering this question right now. I'm watching on my other screen here, which you cannot see, of what's going on that piece. There's a lot of people answering questions. So this is more of a question about using different tools, and there's a lot of that on the A+ certification. Sorry, just taking a sip of a hot beverage, trying to keep this voice going because we're only 20 minutes in. You guys are doing so good with this one too. I'm looking at the results here. Let's see how we did. We're going to go in here before the Googling. Stop Googling the answer. People are Googling degaussing tool. What is that? I wonder what the answer to this is. Well, let's find out what the answer to this is. Well, 75% of you said remove all information from a storage device, but we have double digits on identifying the location of a network drop and verifying the voltage of a wall outlet. Hardly anybody said perform a site survey or reset a mobile device to factory defaults. So this is one of the things that does become a bit of a challenge, is knowing what all these different tools do and being able to work with them. This one is specific to security. You have a hard drive or storage device, and you want to be able to completely make it unreadable. Make it so that nobody can access this information. And a very common way to do it is to destroy it in some way. You can physically destroy the entire drive, of course. You could use a shredder and throw it into a shredder, these enormous big machines that will just crunch up any metal that's thrown into it. Not everybody has one of those sitting around, though. So that's not a very common way to dispose of a hard drive. A drill or a hammer is a much more common way, because you can drill right through the case. Whenever you look at a picture, and I get these pictures from a clip art or a stock photo subscription that I have, and I put them on here, and I try to look for stock photos for technology that are actually applicable and correct. And whenever you look for one that's a hard drive, it never shows you, or rarely shows you, a hard drive with the cover still on it. They always show the hard drive with the cover off of it, and then you doing something with it. Like, you don't take the cover off of your hard drive ever. Don't ever do that. There's no good reason, unless you really want to see what's inside, and you're not wanting to use this drive ever again. You can take the cover off of it. And this is a good way to do it. But you can leave the cover on and drill through it. That's a very easy way to take care of it. It's a very quick way to take care of it. You drill through, you're done. Nobody's accessing that drive again. Electromagnetic is the way we're talking about right now. This is a degaussing tool, which gets rid of the magnetic field inside of the drive. It also gets rid of the magnetic field in the electronics that are on the drive. So you're not only getting rid of all of the data that is on that device, you're actually rendering the drive unusable. Now, of course, someone could replace all of the electronics if they wanted to and still have access to the data if it was still going to be on your magnetic platters, but it's not, of course. Once you degauss, it gets rid of all the data. It just nukes everything. And of course, probably a very bad way to do it, maybe for papers, but definitely not for electronics, is incineration. That will certainly destroy things. This is something that's not unusual to see in very high secure environments and in very low secure environments. It really doesn't matter. You have some very important data that's on your hard drives, and when you're moving to a new computer or you are wanting to give a computer away, you may want to just destroy the drive completely. Now, you could, of course, use software to safely and securely delete everything that's on that drive. But of course, that becomes harder to do on SSDs. In fact, it's impossible to do that on SSDs because of the way that SSDs work on the inside. There may still be personal data that you can't access, that you can't remove somewhere on an SSD that someone who's smart enough would be able to gain access to. So that is a very good way to look at destroying information. So let's see how we did with this. Well, it would not be identifying the location of a network drop. That would be more of a toner and a probe that you might use. The verifying the voltage of a wall outlet is very often done and most commonly done with a multimeter. In my videos, I show you how you plug into the network or the wall outlet and look at the values of the voltages. Performing a site survey of a wireless network is commonly done with a wireless analyzer, so that would not be a degaussing tool. And resetting a mobile device to factory defaults can be done with a mobile device manager or just with the commands that are in the mobile device itself. So the case where you really would be most likely to use a degaussing tool is very clear in this particular case. It is B, removing all information from a storage device. So if you answered B, you got that one absolutely right. I mentioned earlier in the pre-show, if you were here before we really got things started, there's a lot going on right now. With the release of the latest CompTIA exam objectives, a pre-release, if you will, because the newer exam's not available yet. And of course, we're creating more videos. We're updating everything for the new exam, so there's no worries there. But obviously, we're still going to be taking this 800 series exam for many, 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 many months into the future. And if you're planning to take the exam, you might need some help with that. Well, I've taken all of the information that's in all of my videos. I've tried to find the things that were most important for you learning and trying to figure out what you need to know before you take this exam. And I've created some course notes for you so that you can take all of those charts and the graphs and the pictures and everything else from my videos, and you'll have them in one place, one PDF file. It's electronic. You can put it on all of your mobile devices. You can put it on your desktop computer. You can put it on your laptop computer. If you're studying somewhere, I want you to have access to this information. And I cover everything for both the 801 exam. I've got another set of course notes for the 802 exam. So whether you're dealing with printers or mobile devices or troubleshooting or just trying to remember what the differences are in the flavors of Windows, I've got the documents for you. These are the PDFs for the course notes. You can see I've got 9 pages of these for the 801. I've got 12 pages for the 802. Here's all of the command lines, by the way. We were talking about the task list and the task kills right there on the screen. So I've got those ready for you so you can start memorizing what these happen to be. If you're somebody who also, folks are so nice. They say, we love your we love your videos. Can we contribute? Well, I don't take contributions. I like to give you something back for what you're spending your money on, and this might be a good way to do it. If you'd like to help support the site, every dollar from this goes back to keeping the site running as well, and I want to thank everybody for doing that. If you'd like to learn more about this, you can go to ProfessorMesser.com/A+CN, APLUSCN for the A+ course notes. And thanks, folks in the chat room going, oh yes, I have those. Bought them 2 weeks ago. Thanks, Ozman. It is, I think it's a great way to study, and it's something that I use whenever I'm trying to get ready for an exam. So hopefully that's something you'll be able to use as well. Well, let's go through and do some more questions, shall we? We're just getting started. Let's do a question about this, whatever this thing is. I have to be careful when I'm mentioning the question because sometimes I can give away what the answer is. I almost did that on this one. This is one that talks about which of these things might be provided through the use of a duplexing assembly. What in the world is a duplexing assembly? I guess that's kind of what I'm asking here, isn't it? What is this? No answering in the chat room and no Googling. You got to figure these things out on your own. Pretend you're in the class, in there, ready to take the exam right now. Is it printing on both sides of the page? Is it to get faster response time? Is it to provide redundant hard drive data? Is it to get a stronger wireless signal? Or is it to have multiple network links to remote sites? One of these is provided through the use of a duplexing assembly. So you should be able to figure this one out and get it there. This is one of those wherever I'm dealing with this, it really is a challenge. Figuring out these pieces. So if you think you know the answer, go to scratup.com. There it is. Go pop open that new tab, go to the student login, and go to the room Professor Messer. This is one also that whenever I'm working on these, they've got some great apps. I run the apps on my mobile devices as well. Becomes very useful to do that. I'm not telling you if it's an 801 or an 802 question because that might give it away. I'll tell you after we're done if it's an 801 or an 802 question, and that way you won't know. It'll be a mystery. Well, we would hope it would have been a mystery. I'll put it that way in the chat room. I'm watching you. Chat room. There is There's quite a bit to go through in this exam, and this is a really good example of one of these things that might be asked of you, and then you have to take it down to exactly where it is. It's a multiple step question. So let's figure out what these things happen to be on here, and let's go through how we did on these. Boom. Okay. Well, 74%. So the majority said printing on both sides of a page, but we've got double digits on faster network response time. So we've also got single digits for all of the other options as well. So let's talk about duplexing and the way that it works. I use duplexing all the time for what we do. For actually very few things that I print out here in the studio, the duplexing assembly is the thing that allows me to print and manufacture the physical products that we ship out. So this is what we have. This is a duplexer, and it's used for printers when you want to print on both sides of a piece of paper, which is just a great way to do it. You want to save paper. You don't want to have a single page with just on one side of the printing. We want to print on both sides. This is the way you would use it. Now, you could, of course, print everything on one side, then take the paper, put it back into the printer manually, and then print on the other side. But why not have that happen automatically? And that's done through a duplexing assembly. So one of the things that on my printer, this is actually the bottom of my printer, the paper holder. So it doubles not only as a place to store the blank paper, but as it's pulled up into the printer, it comes back down underneath the holder and is duplexed. It effectively is twisted around the other direction to go back out the same path again. It's really ingenious for that, to be able to do this. And it's something that for my printer was just built into the capabilities. There are a number of printers you can buy them, and then later on, if you want to add on the duplexing piece, you can purchase a duplexing piece on the other side. So that's one thing that really helps whenever you're working with this, is having that duplexing there. And it does come in handy. I use mine quite a bit to be able to print out and make those things available. There is so much to go through with the printing part. People in the chat room are like, the printing part of the exam is big, and I have to agree. There is a communication or a piece that we'll talk about in the second hour. They are changing the printing piece a bit, and I think for the better. Well, we'll talk about more about that. Here's another shot of this duplexer, by the way. You can see the paper path. It's going right in there, and it curves around. It's hard to see on this picture, but it curves around and comes right out the other side. So it's just it's a U-turn. Just shoves it right through and U-turns it around. It's really brilliant. It's all plastic. There's nothing, no moving parts with this. That's really well done. That's a Brother printer that I have that does that piece of it. Well, there's a good printing question for you. The folks really enjoyed that in the chat. Everybody hates the printing questions, so let's get away from it as soon as possible. Oh, for those of you that asked, by the way, printing on both sides of the page, A would be the correct thing. Faster response time, I guess you could say a full duplex connection, but we were talking about a duplexing assembly. Those are two different things. And none of these have anything else to do with duplexing. I tried to get things that would have two things in it, like redundant hard drive data or multiple network links to try to fool you, and I did not. Did not fool any of you. So that's one that really tried to work through. Let's go through the next question. Here it is. Which of these would be the best way to enable or disable Windows services during startup in Windows 7? I think I added on the Windows 7 part later on, or I took it off of here so I'd have room. But you'll see it when you go to Socrative.com to the student login, and you'll be able to go to the room name, Professor Messer, and answer it. So the question has many possible answers. Which of these would be the best way to enable or disable Windows services during startup in Windows 7? Would it be computer management? Would it be to edit the boot configuration data? Would it be the system configuration? Would it be modify control panel / programs and features? Would it be configure the Windows registry? Or would it be none of the above? Which one of these would be the best way to do this? That's one of those. Oh, that's a good idea in the chat room. People are saying we could combine these things because a degaussing tool would absolutely disable Windows services. I think that's very clear that it would do a really good job of disabling Windows services. I think we're trying to be a little more strategic with this question. If you think you know the answer and you'd like to be more strategic, go to Socrative.com into the student login and go into the Professor Messer room. That might help as well. That would get you where you need to be with those pieces. I do try to ask questions about this because there is a lot you need to know on the 802 exam around Windows administration. And this is certainly an administration function where you might have a Windows service that you're trying to troubleshoot. Is this causing a problem during startup? Is it causing a problem during the loading of a certain application? Maybe I should just disable this service completely and then reboot the system. So there needs to be something like that to be able to work through these pieces. So we'll have to see if we know what the answers are with this. We've got a number of people have answered, so let's see how we've done with this particular question. How do we do? Let's click the button. Well, we're all over the place. Although I guess 42%, still not a majority, but a number of you did say system configuration. We have kind of a split for the second place, don't we? We have computer management at 18%, edit the boot configuration data at 15%, modify control panel / programs and features at 10%. 14% said you're not fooling me. It's not any of these. You've lost your mind. So have I indeed lost my mind? Well, I think it's a question we do need to have answered, but in this particular case, it is not one that we're really needing to deal with. Well, let me solve this particular problem right now in the chat room. There we go. So one of the things that whenever I'm looking at managing a computing device, I want to be able to step through the pieces and figure out what makes sense. And in this particular case, the best way to enable or disable the Windows services while they are starting up is this is the way to do it. And I think there's a great idea around management on this that really does make a lot of sense. So let's go through this piece. So if I am, here we go. System configuration is what we were looking for here. System configuration is absolutely the place you should go. It's kind of a one-stop shop. It has everything in it that you would ever need to deal with. This is one where when you're going through and trying to figure out what the differences are, this is, you can step through boot processes, application startup, service startup, and there's a lot of other tools in here as well. In fact, it's gotten even more powerful in Windows 8 and Windows 10. And obviously, we don't need to know Windows 8 or Windows 10 for the 800 series exam. But it's one that does become really useful to be able to work with this. I think using this can be really useful, really helpful. If you go to show this, let me show the right thing here. If you go to the Control Panel Administrative Tools, you can start up the system configuration. You can also go run just msconfig. That will bring up the system configuration as well. So a number of different ways to be able to do that. There's also a tab in here for services, and that's really what we were focusing on with this question. Is there a very specific tab, and you can see all the services are listed out there. It's much easier even to manage startup and the process of getting your computer running right from here. It's much easier than even going to the services applet, I think, because you can simply click and unclick. You can go down the list very quickly. And get rid of services you just don't want to see during the startup process. Really useful to be able to do that. And if you're trying to find the thing that's causing a problem, this is a great place for trial and error. So you can just start going through the list. You check the box. All right, that wasn't it. Let's turn it back on. Let's turn off the next one. Reboot. Did that fix it? No. Let's go to the next one. Reboot. And you could do this all the way to the end to find out exactly which one of these services is causing your problem during the startup process. Becomes really, really easy to use too. I think that's one that I like about this. It's kind of a go-to because when I start working with all of these different startup applications, I have tons of apps that start up automatically from the registry. I have a lot of applications that are used as services, so they're starting up in the services view. It's just constant troubleshooting to try to get these things right. So I like being able to use those as well. It becomes really handy. So let's see how we did with this one. Let's go to our Socrative and look at these answers again. And you can see we're sort of mixed. System configuration was the answer in this one. So the 41% of you, and you notice I didn't call it msconfig. I think we're all used to calling it msconfig because we type it all the time. File run msconfig. Go to the command line, run msconfig. We almost don't even remember or even recall that it says right at the top of MS Config system configuration. So that's right on the app. We don't even read it. It's invisible to us. So those that answered C got that one absolutely correct. Computer management would eventually get you to a place where you could configure services. There's no question. But that's another couple steps away from the computer management screen. And I, of course, asked you the best way to enable or disable, which is very common to see on the exam. They will tell you or ask you the best way to do something and then they could give you 4 or 5 answers where every single one of the answers could technically be done to accomplish the thing they're asking. But you need to find the one that's the easiest way to do it. It's the best way to do it. And I will tell you that on the exam, there's a very clear delineation between the things that aren't the best way and the thing that really is the best way. These are not trick questions. It's very obvious, just like this one, very obvious that it's not computer management. System configuration is so simple to use. It's so easy. It's so quick. That's really got to be the best way. There is also editing the boot configuration data. That determines, this is the BCD data. If you ever run BCD edit, and that is part of the 802 exam as well, BCD edit changes what you're setting your startup boot sectors to be, or even boot partitions to be. And that is not something that changes the services. It changes where you're pointing your system to boot from an operating system or boot an operating system. So that's not the right answer either. Modifying control panel programs and features is where you would completely install or uninstall an application. So that's not exactly a good place for enabling and disabling services during startup. I guess technically, if you deleted the application associated with that service, that would definitely stop it from running during startup. But we're looking for the best way to do that. What if you're ready to turn it back on? You're going to have to reinstall it again. That doesn't make any sense. And configuring the Windows registry, just don't do that. Just don't even go in there. There's too many chances for failure inside the Windows registry. Even people who are learned in the Windows registry can easily mess up their Windows registry. I don't know why I would say something like that. I'm just saying. And so the 2% of you don't even touch the Windows registry unless you really, really have to. And there's not a none of the above for this one. It clearly is the system configuration for being able to do this. So hopefully that's given you some ideas around the troubleshooting service startup or troubleshooting application startup. The system configuration is probably going to be your answer every single time for this, being able to work with this. Let's do another question. Let's keep this going, shall we? Here's one right here. What is the maximum distance that you would expect to have on your mobile phone's Bluetooth connection? This was actually a question that came up in our chat room this week where there was some discussion over Bluetooth and over infrared. And I thought, well, that would be a good question for the study group. The possible answers that you might choose would be 1 meter, 10 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters, or 500 meters. It's got to be one of these, right? Very easy to do that and get these running. If you think you know the answer, do not Google and do not say in the chat room. Simply go to Socrative.com, go to the student login, and choose the room name Professor Messer. While we're doing that, folks in the chat room are asking about taking the exams, because there's 2 exams for the A+. You can take the 801 and the 802. And the question was, do you take them both on the same day? Don't take them both on the same day. Do not do that to yourself, your family, your friends. The amount of information you have to cram into your brain to take both of those on the same day is ridiculous. Don't do that. And you don't have to do that. In fact, this becomes even more important with the 900 series, and we'll talk about that in the next at the top of the hour. The 900 series exam has some changes in there around that, but I think the 800 series, it still applies. Both exams are relatively standalone. There's this big troubleshooting section at the end of the 802 that might incorporate some of the information you learned from the 801. And that's why I think the 801 is definitely a standalone test to take. The 802 has a little bleed over that you still need to remember some of the 801 materials, but don't take them both on the same day. It is tough. I know it gets it out of the way very quickly. That's a lot of information to be able to concentrate on. It's not a high percentage type move. It's more of a lower percentage type move for that. You just don't want to do that. And the testing center who cares what the testing center? The question is, what if the testing center tries you to take them both in the same day? Who cares what they want? They're not getting the certification, and last I checked, they aren't paying for it. So I really don't care what the testing center would like. I will bring them cookies. I will bring my own Sharpie, or my own, not Sharpie, but my own dry erase marker. But I don't really care what they think, because it's not their career I'm worried about. I'm worried about me passing the exam. I would never take it. Even when I take the exams, don't take them on the same day. I pretty much know this material at this point. I always do one every other day, or actually I try to skip a day sometimes as well, whenever we go through this piece. Let's see how we did. Well, if you're someone who has a mobile device and you've used Bluetooth, you know the answer to this one. It's about 10 meters, and beyond your headset going beyond 10 meters, I can't hear anything anymore. It's too scratchy. So that is why whenever we're doing this, about 10 meters is the distance. Now, there are differences in the Bluetooth standard. There's different radios that are used for Bluetooth, but for mobile devices specifically. So when we're talking about your phone and your headsets, it's always going to be this 10-meter distance. There is a set of radio standards for Bluetooth that works at a very small distance, like less than a meter. And it's really designed for low power type usage. It's not designed for your headsets or your stereo headsets or anything, or your speakers, not like that. But there are also higher end Bluetooth radios as well that can go well beyond 10 meters. Well, we don't have those in our mobile phones. Our mobile phones are designed to be a short range personal area network. And that personal area network tends to be just about 10 meters around our mobile device. So once you are working with your device, your speakers or your headset or whatever it happens to be, if you walk away more than 10 meters, those two machines can't hear each other anymore. Those two devices cannot hear what's happening going back and forth. So that's why whenever we talk about Bluetooth and mobile devices, we really are talking about a 10-meter distance. That is the maximum we would ever go. 100 meters would be more for Ethernet. That's the maximum distance on an Ethernet connection. And the 1 meter might apply for Bluetooth if you were using that very low power Bluetooth specification for the radios. But again, we're talking about mobile phones Bluetooth connection. That is absolutely 10 meters as your distance. That's a pretty good question. I think we did well on that one. 80% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. There's a lot to know for the exam. We've talked already about command lines and being able to work through the labs and the performance-based questions that might be thrown at you. And one thing you might want to consider if you don't want to get into the environment where you're trying to build your own operating systems, you're trying to get your own labs running, you want to run your own things at the command line, you are really trying to figure out how to get all this going on your own computer. There's Windows XP, there's Windows Vista, there's Windows 7. You got to load all of these up. Well, instead of you doing it, what if it was already ready to go? And GTS Learning has live labs that can do exactly that. The GTS Learning live labs have labs ready to go. It's a virtual environment. You click a button and you're able to work directly on these systems. It is really remarkable how many labs they have, and really focusing in the 802 and having all of those there. I've also got a special agreement with GTS Learning where they price it a lot less than if you went to the GTS Learning website by going to professormesser.com/live labs, and they give you an hour to try it for free. So if you think this might be a solution rather than you trying to find all these licenses of Windows and running things on your own machine and doing your own virtual setups, maybe you want to do it online. And you can try that absolutely free for an hour at professormesser.com/live labs. I really like it. We've demonstrated it on some previous study groups. You may want to go look at some of those demonstrations. It is really a lot of fun. Or just try it yourself. Sign up for an hour. You'll see how easy it is. And it runs right in your modern browser. You don't have to load any software. It just works. It's really remarkable. You can learn more about that, professormesser.com/live labs. We've got some time left, so I want to squeeze in a couple of extra questions for you here near the end. So let's go to the next one. This question is one that comes up quite a bit, especially if you're managing a network and trying to get this going. The question is about NTFS and network share. So you're accessing files on a network share that has both network share permissions and NTFS permissions. So which permissions are going to apply? Because you're obviously accessing it across the network and it has both share types. Is it going to be the share permissions? Is it going to be the NTFS permissions? Is it a combination of both the share and NTFS permissions, or is it neither the share NTFS permissions? If you want to try it yourself or see what the answer is, see if you know what the answer is and put it in yourself, you can go to Socrative.com. No answering in the chat room. We want to see if you know what this happens to be. And don't Google it, just take a guess. This is pretend you're sitting there for the exam and you want to take the answer and figure it out on your own. You may be able to do that just by looking at the answers and the question itself. There is a number of things you need to know for administering your Windows systems, and this is one of those that's clearly written in your 802 requirements. It's in the exam objectives, knowing about network share and knowing about NTFS and what the differences are. And you need to know it now. In fact, we go even a little further deep into it on the 900 series. So it's good to know it now and kind of get it out of the way now, because you will absolutely see that it is going to come up on the exam, possibly come up on the exams. It's very specifically written into the exam objectives. We'll talk more about those exam objectives in just a bit. So some of you answered this one already. Let's see how we've done. How do we do? Let's find out. We have 33% have said share permissions, 20% have said NTFS permissions, 47%, I guess in the lead, have said a combination of both share and NTFS permissions, and D is neither the share nor the NTFS permissions. So which would it be? Which ones would we apply for both of these? Well, let's look at these. NTFS and share. It's a place where you set up different permissions depending on what you're doing with your system. The NTFS permissions are setting permissions in the file system of that computer. So it's going to affect anybody who's touching the file. If you're touching this file, NTFS permissions apply. Can't get around that one. So it applies whether you're connecting on the local machine or whether you're connecting through the network. Share permissions, however, aren't associated with the file system. They're not associated with NTFS. It's a way that you could open up or allow access to a particular drive or set of files on your computer, but limit or provide access to that specific share for the people coming across the network. That's why it's a share permission, because we're sharing this across the network. So when you're working with these two types of permissions, they blend together. And when you're blending them together, they will either add on permissions. Maybe the NTFS provides access to certain files. The share provides access to certain files. We put all of these things together to finally get what the actual permissions are. And always, when you're working with permissions here, the most restrictive setting is going to win when there is a conflict. If NTFS says you cannot have access and share says you can have access, sorry, the most restrictive setting is always going to win. The NTFS in that case will always win. And vice versa, if NTFS says, yeah, you can write to that file, but the share permission says, no, if you're coming across the network, you cannot write to that file. Sorry, you can't write to the file. So you're going to have to combine these together and look at it overall to figure out what type of permissions are going to apply in this particular case. Deny is always going to beat the allow. And the NTFS permissions, by the way, are inherited from the parent object. So if you have a folder within a folder within a folder within a folder, and you really haven't set any permissions for those, the very first folder at that very list is the one that applies all the way through. That's the parent, and it's going to apply all the way to the child objects. The only difference here is if you move the folder across the volume, it's really only changing a pointer on where that's located in the file system. So if you set some permissions and then you move it, the permissions stay with it. So it's a little sneaky thing you do have to know about NTFS and the way it works, and important for your exam as well to know that, to be able to work with it. And it's a perfect time to bring this up since they mentioned in the chat room. If you are watching this for your type of your continuing education units, this will give you a full hour of doing this. You can simply go to the top or bottom of my website to the Contact Us link, put into that Contact Us link your name, tell me that this is the October A+ study group, and tell me that the secret word was NTFS. So that would be an easy way to get an hour of CEUs. But we've got more. I've got another question for you. Oh, before we do that, let's see how we answered with this one. You can think about that question while we're doing this. The answer was share permissions, NTFS permissions, a combination of both or neither. As I mentioned, we combine these things together. The most restrictive wins. Therefore, it would be a combination of both share and NTFS permissions. I don't guess the most restrictive wins, the most restrictive blocks, I guess is a good way to say that. But if you answered C, the 50% of you got that one absolutely right. It is. It's blended. Will it blend? Yes, it will. NTFS and share, put in your blend tech, and it will absolutely blend together to give you the answer of C. So let's go back to that question that you saw flash by on your screen that I quickly moved away from so I could give you this answer. And it's one of these that is more of a memorization question. And it's an important one for the A+ exam to memorize. There's an entire section of A+ on interfaces and speeds and distances. And it's important to know these things because when you're trying to connect different devices, you're trying to plug into a network, you're trying to connect an external drive, there's going to be questions about how long can that cable be? Can I daisy chain them together? Where can I put them in relation to this computer that's here on the desk? That is one thing you do need to know. So when we talk about the maximum speed of USB 3.0, you need to be able to answer whether it is 12 megabits per second, 480 megabits per second, 2 gigabits per second, 5 gigabits per second, or 10 gigabits per second. It's got to be one of those, right? USB 3.0, relatively new in the world of USB. It's only been around the last year or two. I guess you could say maybe 3. Maybe it just came out about 3 years ago. Somewhere in there. Don't Google it. Stop Googling it. Stop doing that. Go to Socrative.com, student login, go to the Professor Mess Room and guess it. I bet you know the answer. This is certainly one of the interfaces that's important to know for your A+ exam. This is an 801 question for sure, and being able to work with this. I listed out in my course notes. I have a list of all the interfaces. I have a list of their distances, and you need to know. It's an important thing. I made sure I put it in there for you to be able to work with. Let's see how we did with this particular question. And knowing this USB, well, we have one that really stuck out, but everybody else, we have a number of double digits here. 59% said 5 gigabits per second. Wow, it's fast. Is that right? 480 megabits per second. That's a lot slower. 16% of you said that was that one. And the other double digit was 10 gigabits per second. That's really fast, relatively speaking to everything else. So let's see which one of these things it actually is. USB 3.0 is, as I mentioned, a relatively new standard, but we've been using USB for so long. USB 1.1 was one that was one of the very first implementations of USB. It had 2 speeds that it ran at. It had a low speed at 1.5 megabits per second, and it had a what they call full speed, which was 12 megabits per second. At the time, that was pretty good. We plug in our hard drives and we transfer data. We quickly found that was kind of slow. And we were very happy when USB came out with a new version. USB 2.0 came out, and a 2.0 device was able to transfer information at 480 megabits per second. Boy, that was much faster. That was a lot more tolerable, especially when the big files that we have these days, the big videos that we are transferring, the big pictures, a very good one to be able to send this information through. But of course, time marches on. We have newer standards and faster standards available, and the USB 3.0 is absolutely a faster standard. With the super speed, they call it, USB 3.0's super speed is super fast at 5 gigabits per second. So this is one that can really send some traffic, some data down that USB line, and you can see it has a 3-meter maximum distance for this particular interface type. This is one that really can come in handy. That extra speed. Usually it's also color, this blue color. USB 1.1 and 2.0 tends to be a darker color like a black or gray. They tend to color the USB 3.0 blue. In fact, some of the newer computers might have a combination of different speed interfaces on that computer, and you might see the USB interfaces themselves will have some are black and some are blue, and that's why to designate between the older USB and the newer USB 3.0. The USB 3.0 B or A interface that you see here actually will fit into the older 1.1 and 2.0 USB interfaces. It was designed that way to be backwards compatible. There are a number of extra pins in the 3.0, so if you're plugging into a 3.0 interface, those extra pins, the extra signals you have there, are able to give you the extra speed. But if all you have is the slower connection, you can always plug into the slower connection. It will still work just fine. Thank you, folks who designed USB, for being able to do that. This is the answers then. If we look to see how we did, you can see that it's definitely not 12 megabits per second, 480. There is not a USB standard that runs at 2 or 10, at least not at the moment. So 5 gigabits per second. Those of you that answered the D got that one absolutely correct. Well, there's a lot going on here. By the way, for those of you that do like to watch my study groups, you'll notice that the next one is not a month away. It's a lot less than a month away. I'm moving all my study groups up a couple of weeks so that instead of it running into the Thanksgiving and Christmas timeframes in November and December, we'll now watch it earlier in the month. So if you're putting this on your calendar, and you can always find this at professormesser.com/calendar, we're having the next one November 4th, so you don't have to wait very long to have another live study group. In fact, the next 6 weeks for me will be one event every week for the next 6 weeks. I am not taking a break. We're going to do it all the way through for these pieces. So put that on your calendar for next time. You'll be able to join us live. If you are watching the replay, you'll notice that you're not able to get into Socrative and you can't participate live and you can't answer the questions. That's why, because you do have to be here live to be able to do that. Well, we've gone through an entire hour of these. Remember that you can always find me on Twitter and YouTube and Instagram and Facebook and all those by typing in professormesser.com/something, /Twitter, /YouTube, /Instagram, /Google Plus, /something. LinkedIn, I think. I don't know. I put them out there and I kind of forget if they're there. If you are interested in helping to support the site and you just need some great course notes to help you pass the exam, go to professormesser.com/A+CN, APLUSCN. Of course, there are links right here on this live page at professormesser.com/live. All these links are at the top as well. My thanks again to GTS Learning. Get your free hour of your live labs at professormesser.com/live labs. And of course, join us every month. Check the calendar. I do one of these for A+, we do one for Network Plus, we do one for Security Plus. Try to fit in some live events during the month, and we like to have a lot of fun with these. Well, if you are watching this and you're interested in the 900 series exam, stick around. That's what we'll be talking about in the after show. I'll open up the phone lines and you'll be able to call in and ask questions directly. Otherwise, yes, we've kind of got to the end of the hour. I want to thank everyone for attending. What a great time we always have. We'll see you next time on the study group. Thanks, everyone. Yes, it's over. What happened? It went by so quick. What are we going to do? What's the after show? And in the after show, it's whatever we want to do. I will usually open up the phone lines. We will talk about stuff. I have a lot to talk about stuff-wise this month. So a lot of the questions, yesterday, literally, the CompTIA, well, we're going another hour. For those of you wondering, are we done here? Nope, we got another hour. We're going to talk. I'm just keep talking until I'm done. So the questions, though, we're done with the questions. So now it's more of an open forum. In the after show. This is of a great week. It's a crazy week, and it's a confusing week because yesterday CompTIA released the brand new edition of the exam objectives for the 220-901 and the 220-902 exams. These are exams, by the way, that are not available anywhere yet. They released the exam objectives, but they have not offered to provide the exam to anyone. This is a perfectly common thing to do by CompTIA. This is their normal operating procedure. They will send out the exam objectives and make them public, and then later on, they actually flip a switch and you can schedule yourself for the exam. So currently, you cannot schedule yourself for a 901 exam or 902 exam. Earlier in the year, CompTIA said, we are really looking at making this exam available by the end of the year. So we still don't have a specific date from CompTIA, but we certainly expect it will be out by the end of the calendar year. So I think that's probably a pretty good idea since we now see that there are actual exam objectives on the street. So yeah, looks like a new one is coming. So there's a lot that's changed between the 801 and the 901 and the 802 and the 902. They're completely new editions of of these exams, but there's a lot that's the same as well. So the first thing I want to be sure everyone is aware of for this is that the exam itself, and now my head's in the way on this, but about 75% of the 900 series exam is identical to the 800 series exam. USB didn't go away. USB is still here. So we'll talk about that. Share and NTFS permissions. Still need to know that. Windows 7. It's on the 802. It's on the 902. So there's a huge amount of overlap. So if you're someone who is not currently studying for the A+, and by the way, we're recording this on October the 14th of 2015, you should find out if this is after that date, if CompTIA is now offering the 900 series. Because my general recommendation to people is to take the newer exam. But there may be a good reason that if they're still offering the 800 series, that you might want to take the 800 series as well, or instead of the 900. And I'll talk about why that is in a moment. So a lot of the old stuff is gone. So there's no more RAM bus RAM. There's no more SIMs. There's no more CRTs. There's no more Windows XP. There is now Windows 8 and 8.1. There is Windows Phone. There is Mac OS. That's new. There is lots of Linux. There is a lot of Linux. Relatively speaking, there was no Linux and no Mac OS before. Now there's a lot of Mac OS. There's a lot of Linux. So now we've got a good chunk of new material we're going to have to learn to have this in here. And it's a good chunk. I will talk about more about this in a moment. The overall structure of the exam has changed a little bit as well, and I think the change in structure is for the best. I love the new structure, actually. I don't know about love. I like it a lot. I'm finding that I'm happy to spend time with you. New structure. There's a lot of good things about the new structure. Where each exam is now so much more self-contained. In fact, there really are self-contained exams. As we were mentioning in the study group before, the 801 is kind of a self-contained exam, but the 802 has a troubleshooting section that references information that you learned in the 801. So it's not kind of a standalone. You can't really study for just the 802. You kind of have to study material across both. Well, now that changed everything. The 901 exam is really a standalone exam. You can study for that, pass the exam, go to the 902, and it's a completely different set of information because each exam now has its own troubleshooting section. And that troubleshooting section deals with just what's on that exam. It's a much better way to do this. Yes, Mac OS and Linux is not on the 800 series exam. Mac OS and Linux is on the 900 series exam. So the exam that's not out yet, it's got new stuff. The exam that's out now, it doesn't have new stuff. That's kind of the executive summary for this piece. Let's step through these, though. Let me tell you what's in these exams. Obviously, there is the new technology refresh for these. If you want to be able to get these exam objectives, by the way, they are available to download right now. You can download the 801 and the 901, put them next to each other, and see what the differences are, which is what I did. I went through all of these exams to be able to do this. Printers now no longer has its own domain. So this is big, actually. This is pretty important. There were a number of people this week in my chat room that told me more than they probably should have told me about the exam. They said, I took the exam, and I won't tell you what the number they gave me. There were a lot of printer questions. There were so many printer questions that I said, really? Were there that many printer questions? Are you kidding me? They were not kidding me. There were a lot of printer questions. And if you look at the exam objectives for the 220-801, as I got to think, I'm like, well, that does kind of make sense. Let's look at this. In fact, if I go to the 220-801 and I bring up the exam objectives, not the presentation, but the objectives themselves. I think I have a little bit of an older set of objectives here, but this will work all the same. And I'll put this up on the screen so you can see it. So on the exam, this is a copy of the exam objectives. So on the exam objectives for the 801, this is the 220-801 exam, Printers has its own domain, and it is 11% of the exam. Now, if you think you're going to get about 85 questions or 90 questions on the exam, we'll do 90, and we'll say it's 10%. That means you could get 9 questions on printers. That's a lot of questions on printers. when you consider all of the other things that are in this exam. And we're not using printers as much as we used to. It is a slow decline. I'll grant you that. But we're printing a lot less. We're much more mobile. We don't usually have printers next to us any longer. So what they did was they modified the exam so that they got rid of the printer domain. The printer domain's gone. They just integrate it into the hardware section of the exam. So what that's good for, if I bring up the exam objectives, the newer ones, so now we get to do a comparison across both of these. So here is the 900 series exam. Let me show it to you. Here we go. So now we're at the 22901, freshly downloaded. And if I scroll down, the hardware section, 34%. So now, instead of getting potentially 9 questions about printers, it's going to be combined within what I think will be 14 or 15 different domains, different sections of that domain. So you should, if I do my calculation right, I of course don't write the exams, but if I look at these numbers, I believe you should get a fewer number, a much fewer in many cases number of the printers. You shouldn't have such a huge emphasis on printing any longer. Is what I'm trying to say very badly. That is what I'm going with on that. That's the benefit of knowing that. Yeah, the printer section, although let me keep in mind, because now people are looking at this going, the printer section is just gone. It's not gone. They took everything that was in the printer section and they put it in domain 1. So the content is exactly the same. They didn't lose it. In fact, they added information. They added printer stuff because there's not only laser and impact and dot matrix, but there's and thermal, but now there's also virtual printers. So now there's actually more, but they're going to ask you fewer questions about printers. That's what I'm trying to get to. Is they're probably now going to ask you much fewer questions about printers. I guess technically they could take the entire 34% asking about printers, but that's unlikely that they would do that. In fact, I don't think that's possible given what I see about exam and what they do. By the way, I know nothing about the thought process behind making these exams. I'm not affiliated with CompTIA. I don't participate in the exam creation process. I see it when you see it. So that's kind of the things we learn about as we're going through these pieces. So to answer the question quickly in the chat room, you should not study 801 or 901, 902 right now. It's not even available. Don't. And don't wait for it. Study 800 series. Just for those of you in the chat room that are wondering. Networking now is actually much better. Networking really focuses from the user's perspective. So it used to be that networking, we had to know about TCP/IP classes. You had to understand the just minor nuances around subnetting. You didn't have to know a lot about subnetting, but they did require you know a little bit about subnetting. Now you don't have to know any of that. They really changed the focus to be you working on the network from the workstation's perspective, which I think is a good change. There's plenty to do on networking in the Network Plus exam. If you're going to be a network administrator, you're going to be doing that Network Plus. On the A+, you need to know about how to configure networking, how to troubleshoot the network configuration. Kind of nice to be missing that one, isn't it? And the domain on laptops is gone completely. It's now called mobile devices, and it includes laptops and mobile devices, tablets, phones, the whole list of things. So that's, as I mentioned, there's a section on troubleshooting that's on the 901 that really does make it a standalone exam. Now, what's important here is that there are certain command lines that you need to know for troubleshooting all of this hardware. So there is command lines on the 901 exam, potentially. It's in the exam objectives. You could certainly be asked about it. There will be somebody's 901 exam will have command lines. So the 801 exam had 0 command lines. So this is a significant change that you do need to know these troubleshooting. Now, fortunately, by separating out the troubleshooting, you get a little bit of troubleshooting in 901 and get a little troubleshooting in 902 instead of having the huge bunch of it clumped into one single exam, which I think is kind of nice. We don't know the 901 release date yet. It has not been released, so we don't know. I'm giving you a sneak peek of what is to come. It's actually not really sneak because you can download these now. So it's a peek of what to come. So the 902 exam, let's shift our efforts to the 902. XP's gone. Why'd they get rid of XP? Does anybody know why they got... Oh, there we go. Apparently, it's not supported any longer. So Windows XP is no longer on the exam. So that takes care of everything I ever knew about computing. It's gone. What am I going to do now? Well, I'm going to learn Windows 8. Windows Vista and Windows 7 are still on the exam. Windows 8/8.1. It's the same operating system, by the way. So Windows 8/8.1 is really what you need to know, along with Vista and 7 for the 902 exam. You also need to know a bit about Mac OS X and Linux. You absolutely need to do a lot of people use XP. In the chat room, they're going, nobody's using XP. Oh, a lot of people are using XP. A lot of people. So you just don't need to know it for the A+ exam. The difference between these operating systems and the 902 exam is pretty dramatic, though. You need to know a lot about Windows. You need to know a little bit about Mac. You need to know a little bit about Linux. The focus is still Windows. And you can kind of think about it from a desktop user's perspective. Most of the machines you're going to run into are Windows. Then you're going to run into some folks that are running Mac OS X. And you're going to run into other folks that are running Linux. So it's just Linux. It is not about Unix. We're really talking about Linux. Nobody runs Unix on their desktop. Everyone, if they're running that style of POSIX-based operating system, they're going to be running Linux. Technically speaking, of course, Sean, in the chat room, if you're running Mac OS X, you kind of are running Unix since it is based on BSD. So for those of you that were ready to send me an email, I'm sorry. I just kind of cut your knees out right there. Sorry. You should still send it. Still send it and say, but no, Professor, because Mac OS is BSD. Except I know that. We just talked about it. There is, of course, the security section on the 902 exam that has been revamped quite a bit. It's not as generic as it was on the 802. There was more specifics you need to know. It doesn't go deep into security. So you don't have to become a network security expert for your A+ exam, but it's nice that they laid out more specifics in securing a desktop machine, a laptop, and mobile devices, which I thought was nice. Be able to have it there and save it there. And there is an entire domain on software troubleshooting, since the 902 exam is effectively software and operating systems, and the 901 exam is hardware. There's really more of a separation these days, and it's clearly called software troubleshooting. And you need to know how to troubleshoot the desktop and the mobile operating systems with this. Now, knowing this, the 900 series exams have not been released. The 900 series exams on October the 14th, 2015, have to date not been released. You can't take these exams. So obviously, you can't really do anything with this knowledge. I'm telling you a lot of things that are completely worthless. The last 18 minutes of me been droning on with material that you can't use yet. But they did make these exam objectives available, so you can at least download and see what's coming. Some of you may not want to take the 800 series, which, by the way, I don't recommend. I think you should never wait to get certified. There is too much upside on getting a certification. Ideally, you're doing this for a reason. I mean, there's got to be some reason behind you getting a certification. You're either looking to get a job, you're looking to get a better job, you're looking to do something with the certification. Maybe it's your own self-worth. Maybe you just like taking exams, and this is something you want to do for yourself, which I think is great too. But don't wait. Whether you take the 800 series exams and pass them, or you take the 900 series exams and you pass them, you get exactly the same piece of paper. It is exactly the same certification. It does not say you have an 800 series A+, or you have a 900 series A+. Doesn't matter. The paper just says A+. So it doesn't matter which one you take. Don't wait to get certified. That's crazy. There's too much upside. Start right now. Assuming they come out with the 900 series exam right now, they have heard me and said, nope, we're releasing it. It's now available to take. What traditionally CompTIA has done is given you at least 6 months before they ever get rid of the old exam. So even if it happened today, you'd have plenty of time to take both of those exams. So, and I understand a lot of people have said December. I don't know if it's December or not. CompTIA hasn't said. But don't rely on anything anyone says that's not been coming directly from CompTIA, who has said this is exactly when we're doing it. Because I can tell you sometimes these things slip a bit, or they change, or they move up. It depends. So just assume that if they came out with it right now, they've always given us at least 6 months, and I have no reason to believe that they would do anything different. In fact, I think there was one A+, it was longer than 6 months. So they could even extend it even further than 6 months, but still 6 months is plenty of time. So don't stop what you're doing because they released a new set of exam objectives. Keep focused, take your 800 series, and quite honestly, the 900 series is going to be a little more difficult. There are 21 Linux command line commands that you need to know on the 902. A lot of commands. And these aren't simple. Some are simple commands like ls. Some are very involved Linux commands that you would rarely use, quite honestly. I don't know why they're in there. In fact, I have them on my screen. Is this the 902? Let me bring up the 902 objectives. I'll show you what they are. You could tell me that I'm wrong. Now Linux people get to tell me I'm wrong. This is great. Before it was just Windows people that got to tell me I'm wrong. Now everybody. Mac OS 10 people get to tell me I'm wrong. You get what? Sound like I've got a problem. I need to talk to someone. Let's go find the list of Linux. Here's Windows. Let's show you the Windows. There's the Windows. Woo! Lots of Windows command line tools. Woo! There they are. Bunches. We've got. Let's keep scrolling. Scroll. There's system utilities. Even more. Lots of command line tools. Let's keep scrolling. Scroll. Here we go. Other operating systems. It's domain 2. Here's the Linux commands. ls, grep, cd. That's not so bad. What about all these? Shutdown. pwd versus passwd. Those are two different things. I guess they aren't so far off the mark. Some of these you might rarely do, like an apt-get, but that's still a very valuable thing to know. dd is one of those where you really don't do a lot of dd. Maybe that's the one I was thinking at in my head. I do a lot of vi, or vim for me. I do a lot of ps, and I do a lot of these others. So, if you're on the Professor Messer website right now, you're on a Linux box, and I'm the administrator. So, or at least I'm at the full admin. Thank you, Eliza in the chat room, for doing that. Or as they say here in the South, how's that working for you? My Dr. Phils are in there taking care of me. That is my summary of the 901 and 902 exams. I've written a complete overview that goes into much more detail on my website. That's in my after class section, or you can just go to the professormesser.com. I think at the bottom right now, it's one of the more recent articles that you can click on, which is a comparison of the 901, the 902 exams. I really go into detail and I pick things out. I have already gone through all of it. I have created a lot of new material. We will be creating all new videos. They are all going to be 1080p, which is new for the A+ videos that I have. I've done that with other courses now, all 1080p. They're going to be released in that high definition. The video production is currently underway. So I mentioned in the pre-show that I have already got some that are in the can waiting to go through post-production. So I will be editing today because I can't talk after this. So it's a perfect time to sit down and edit more. I've already got a number of videos already done that are just ready for the release day. So we're working on it. And the course notes are already done. I've already gone through all the new materials and worked on the course notes. So we are ready to go with those pieces. I have done a lot in a very short period of time, but there's still a ton more to do to get these videos done. Usually I've been working on content for a long time with these videos in expectation of what is going to show up. So I've already got a lot of things already done. So we have quite literally been working on these for months already. So that's one of those things. Well, it's been high def now. It's 720 right now, 720p. So that's one of those. It's a cube. It's not Anniversary Mac, but it is a cube back there. It's kind of nice, isn't it? have that Mac, and it's come in handy. Most of what I do here is Mac OS, just because it's very focused on doing video, and it tends to work the best. But obviously, in front of me, I also have a Windows machine doing the video piece. My audio here to my left is actually an embedded Linux. If you're on the Professor Messer website, there are multiple Linux devices you're going through to get here. So I do a little bit of everything. Don't think I haven't thought about streaming in 4K. Don't think I hasn't. Heck, we need to stream in 1080p. You notice I'm not streaming in 1080p right now. I'm streaming in 720. And I'm actually working on having at least 1080p streaming. I've got the bandwidth. I've just been trying to find the right set combination of things. You would think one of these would stream 1080p. None of these stream 1080p. 1080p would be great. I think that would be, I don't know if you'd like this. Somebody asked earlier on if this was a green screen behind me. No, this is real. I can interact with this. Let me unplug. I can interact with things that are back here. You can't hear me. You can't hear this. But there's you can touch it. It works. See? There's things with this. So it's real. So there, I was able to answer that question for people that were wondering, what is that? What's going on back there? No, there's things back there. You can barely see what's going on. Yeah, I've got quite a bit back there with those pieces. Got to put that more. I know you didn't hear me. Once you get away from the mic, can't hear anything. This mic's designed so you can't really hear what's going on once you get away from it for those. Well, I thank you for the audio, James. I have quite a bit of audio equipment in here to work with. The audio not only goes through this mixer. I've got what I think is a pretty nice mic with the Heil PR40. And then it also goes through an Axia processor. So that gives me a little tweaking. Let me turn off the processor. Normally it sounds like this. Then I turn the processor on. Now it sounds like this. So the processor is amazing. It really is a nice processor. This is one of those. That's kind of good to have that there. So one of these days, by the way, the Mac Cube up there is actually usable. It's I've got the power and everything. I really need to turn it on, and one of these times, just run it to get this going. Let's open up the phone lines so we can actually have something there. I'm not tricking anyone. That's legit. It's too legit to not want to do it. Let's go to my shows. Let's host a show. Let's start the show. Okay, the show is started. Now I have to call into the show just like you have to call into the show, and I'll put the phone number up in just a moment. But first, let me call into this. This is the fun part of the show, by the way, where everybody gets to see me do work rather than doing an actual show with this.
Welcome to Comcast.
That is the wrong number. I am not calling Comcast. How do you like that one? So we're all gonna call Comcast today, and I don't think that's what we're shooting for.
Thank you for calling.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm not calling Comcast. Oh boy.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Okay. All right.
Host.
Okay.
You are now in the host room.
I am in the host room. Thank you, nice lady. And let me put up the graphic here. Oh, that's not it. Wait a second. What happened? I have to put the graphic up. I'm putting up the wrong things on the screen. Help. What's going on? There it is. I'll get it straight in a second. There's a lot of buttons here. I don't know if you noticed this. Look at all these buttons. It's a perfect opportunity to completely mess up an entire live streamed event. And I'm just the guy for it. Oh, I've already called Comcast over the last number of weeks. It's been delightful. It's been fantastic. We already have people waiting on the phones, and I didn't even turn the phone lines on, and yet they're there. So we've got to at least go to that caller who was just waiting for the moment at the 240 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Kenny.
Hey, Kenny, thanks for calling. What can we do for you today?
Yeah, I found something interesting about the Apple laptops.
Oh, tell me.
You know, when people buy them, right? And a friend of mine said the lady should have sent hers back, and I said, why should it send her back? And well, he was saying that she had Trojans on her laptop.
All
And
right.
I said, Trojans? I said, I thought Macs have virus protection. And he said, well, they don't tell you that when you buy the Apple laptop. I said, what? I mean, people buy them, but they don't put protection on it?
They don't.
I mean, he said that they do have some kind of protection, but they don't tell the store that you need to buy some kind of protection or something for your laptop. And I was quite shocked by that. So I went to the Micro Center store, and a guy tells me, oh, yeah, people are not aware that it's Apple is just like our software, and anything get in it corrupts it, and then you're screwed.
You need security for your Windows machine, for your Linux machine, for your Mac OS machine, for your Android device, for other operating systems as well. Just because it's a computer made by Apple doesn't mean that it is not susceptible to vulnerabilities and malware, because there absolutely are vulnerabilities and malware for Mac OS just like any other operating system. You're absolutely right, Kenny.
Yeah, I was quite shocked by that. I said, don't let people Apple tell them that? And he said, well, no, don't tell them that. And I said, whoa. So I wanted to know, if I buy one, what is a good protection I would need for the Mac OS?
There is no, I wouldn't say best protection, but I would say there are some leaders out there for ideally we're talking malware protection for Mac OS. One advantage you at least have, and the thing that most people will say, Macs don't get viruses, but of course we all know that's not true. That is just people hoping, I guess, for the best. But there are a vastly smaller number of malware and viruses for that attack the Mac OS X operating system. So there is the benefit of that. But of course, there are vulnerabilities in the operating systems. There are vulnerabilities in the applications that run in the operating systems. And there's a crypto locker version out there for Mac OS, for Linux, for Windows machines. You're not somehow protected just because it's the Mac operating system from Apple. I have used a couple of different ones on my machines. I have a lot of Apples that I've used over the years, and I usually go to the big players, and I tend to switch back and forth. Which one am I doing right now? I'm going to look at the one I've got on my machine. That's what it just runs in the background. I rarely see it going on, and I think it's see if I have it on this machine or not. I'm using a separate device here for mine, but I've usually in the past gone to the big names. I think the Sophos is what I had most recently. I have used Kaspersky in the past. It is Sophos that I have on my machine now. I've used Kaspersky in the past, although Kaspersky has had some PR problems with really trusting their services as of the last year or so. That's something you can always go back and research. And the other big names, Symantec makes one for Mac. McAfee has a Mac-based product, and those have been around. Those are Mac products that have been around for a very long time, and they have a pretty good signature set. No single product, no single security product will stop 100% of attacks. It's just statistically impossible. But those would be, at a bare minimum, something I might want to have on my Mac to be able to do that. One other piece of software I run on my Mac, and this one is incredibly useful for this exact kind of thing, is one called Little Snitch. And Little Snitch, I'm going to bring up the network monitor I have here for Little Snitch, so we can see. You can't see it on the phone, but I'll show it on my machine. You can always watch the replay. Here it is. I've got it right there. So this is a piece of software that sits on the Mac, and it watches what your Mac talks to. So our biggest problem with malware these days is that it gets embedded on your machine, and now it starts sending your information out to a mothership. Well, what Little Snitch does, it watches what you do normally. It will tell you, oh, you're using Skype, you're using Twitter, it's talking out to Twitter, and it pops up a message that says, hey, Twitter is talking out to the Twitter server. Is this okay? And you say, yes, never tell me that again. So after about 5 or 10 minutes, you've gotten through your Skype and your Google Chrome and your Twitter and all the things you use. And then it goes quiet because it knows now what you normally will do. And if anything on your machine runs and now tries to talk back to a place where you weren't expecting, it pops up a message on your screen and says, hey, little snitch is letting you know that I'm snitching on this program that's trying to go somewhere that it should not be going. Is that okay? And you now have the opportunity to stop it. So it's that's another one I really like. That one costs money, but the money there I think is well worth it. It's a great little utility.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I heard another protection that Micro Center sells called ESET. You heard that one?
Mm-hmm.
ESET?
ESET's it's another one of those big antivirus companies. Yep, it's one of those where it's just as good as anything else, I would imagine. The challenge is keeping up with the vulnerabilities and how fast they can give you a signature update when a problem is found. And I tend to see the larger companies find them faster. The McAfee's and Symantec's of the world tend to find these problems much faster because they have corporate clients who are running Macs who find these problems and let them know about it, and they can create a signature. That still takes time, but at least you're a little bit faster than other folks are at that.
Can you run McAfee on Apple OS?
Sure. They have there's a McAfee antivirus flavor for Windows, for Mac OS, for Linux, and other operating systems too. So they have a flavor just for Mac OS 10.
Good.
Yep.
Well, good. That's what I need. Well, you should warn everybody about that. If you buy an Apple, make sure you protect it, because if you don't, you're screwed.
and interestingly enough, in the 900 series exam, when they're asking about Apple and Mac OS 10, security is a piece of that. And then you go through what you need for security on a Mac, what you need for security on a Linux. So CompTIA has already added that to the exam. So that's an excellent suggestion.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. I just wanted to pass the word out to let everybody know that you buy an Apple, don't believe the store to tell you, because they won't tell you need protection. So
do not believe the hyperbole, as they say, Kenny.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the call.
Thank you, sir.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
This is a common theme, though, with these pieces, and having to deal through multiple operating systems. It really speaks to the reason that CompTIA added this to the exam. So let's go to the next call. Thanks for holding for so long. And the 214 area code, are you there, caller?
Hey, Professor, this is Chris calling this.
Hey,
how you doing?
Hey, Chris, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
Yeah, I have just completed my 801 about a couple of weeks ago, and I did purchase your study guides for the 801 and 802. They were really helpful.
Thank you.
I just want to know what do you think is the best way I could? Well, I guess as far as right now, what are maybe your 3 top domains I should maybe go over for 802?
Oh, the 802 exam. And it is such a different exam than the 801. So the question I usually will ask people when they're looking at these two exams and trying to figure out which one's harder and what do I need to study for, because it's a common question. So are you someone who comes from a background that is more hardware-based or is more software-based or is neither?
I would say software-based.
Okay, that's kind of how I was when I took my first A+ exam. Is I had installed Windows on a few machines. I was comfortable with the Windows operating system, but I had not spent a lot of time on the hardware of a computer. And I've done memory upgrades and things, but I had no idea how it all worked, kind of scenario.
Right.
So I was able to get through whatever version of that, the 301 or 601 or whatever it was back in those days. And the operating system one, I felt it was much easier for me to understand. The things in the 802 exam are so focused on Windows and so focused on troubleshooting. I think the troubleshooting is the one that gives most people their problems. So if I had to tell someone to focus on a particular set of topics, go to that last domain in the 802, because if you can troubleshoot, then you kind of already know those other pieces about the operating system. If you can troubleshoot Windows, you already know what the recovery console is. If you can troubleshoot a hard drive, you already know about how a hard drive works. If you can troubleshoot an installation of Windows, you know about the installation process. So a lot of the domain that deals with how to fix things are already assuming you know what the things are to begin with. If that makes any sense. So I think if I had to focus on a section of that exam, focusing on the last domain will help you understand what was in the first domain. Now, the 802 exam also has other topics on it as well. You don't want to miss anything. For instance, the 802 goes through, well, I'll bring up these pieces. The operating systems themselves. We have to know about mobile devices is on the 802, so you don't want to miss that. There's a little bit of troubleshooting mobile devices on the 802, so that's useful. There is some network troubleshooting on there as well. So you kind of have to go back to the 801 things that you learned about networking and learn about those pieces too, as well as learning about troubleshooting laptops, which was on the 801. So that's some of that overlap I was talking about earlier. So if I had to point you in a direction, go to that troubleshooting domain and start stepping through the requirements. And if you can start checking off every one of those exam objectives, you'll be in very good shape for the 802 exam. Don't miss those other things that were in the other domains as well.
All right. Thank you, Professor.
Thanks for calling. Good luck, Chris.
Thank you.
That's a very common thing. I think the troubleshooting sections are where you learn what it's all about. You know, when it's broken, that's when you can really figure out how to fix it. That's where you learn stuff. Let's learn who's on the line from the 330 area code. Are you there, caller?
Yeah, my name is Chris.
It's another Chris. Is everybody named Chris? Is that how we're going to do this? I think everybody should be called Chris.
It's an awesome name. It's an awesome name.
It is an awesome name. What can we do for you, Chris?
Yeah. First and foremost, I want to say I love your website. I love what you do.
Thank you.
It's helped me tremendously, and I really appreciate it.
I'm glad.
You've been like one of the, yeah. At this moment, I can't really afford to like buy any more study material.
I understand.
I'm in between jobs right now, so like, I want to learn command line. I want to like memorize it and know it like the back of my hand.
Yep.
So, like, what would you recommend for me to do to learn command line? What kind of like virtual? Would I use a virtual machine? Would I use like my machine? How do I go about doing that?
This is one of the biggest problems with the 802 exam is that there is so much with operating systems on the exam, and not just an operating system, but you have to know about Windows XP, which has its own challenges these days. Not everybody has access to XP any longer. You need to know about Windows Vista. Try finding a Vista machine somewhere to be able to work on these things. And there's also Windows 7. So you have to have 3 separate operating systems to be able to work through all of the things you need to know at the command line for this exam. So it's relatively comprehensive, and it's somewhat difficult to find all of these operating systems anywhere, especially as you mentioned, there are budgetary concerns about spending more money just to get an operating system running. So I have a website that everybody should make a note of that will give you every single one of these Windows operating systems to use in your lab on a virtual machine, full-blown Windows OS, absolutely free. So this will certainly help with what you're doing. This is a Microsoft site called the Microsoft's modern.ie. Modern, like it's not old, it's modern. Modern.ie. And there's a tools section here for virtual machines. And you have virtual machines here for Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 8.1, Windows 10. All the way from XP to 10, that you can download these virtual machines, and they are full-blown version of Windows that do everything Windows does. It is a lifesaver.
That's amazing.
It is a fantastic lifesaver. So for all of the videos that I'm doing for the new A+ certification, I just downloaded their images and use them in my lab and show you what's doing. Now, the license says you can't use this for production purposes. You can't use this to run your local operating system on your machine. And indeed, they do have these set so that at a certain date, they time out. I think it's a 30 or 60 or 90-day timeout, something of that sort, which at that point, you just download another one and run it because you're not using it for anything. It's kind of a throwaway operating system. But what you need on your machine, whether you're running Windows, Mac, or Linux, they have pre-built virtual machines for you. So if you're running Windows, they ask what virtual machine you would like. Let's say we wanted Internet Explorer 10 running on Windows 7, although it doesn't matter for me. And they say, are you running VirtualBox? Are you running Vagrant? Are you running VMware? Are you running Parallels? And that's for my Windows or my Mac machine. For Windows, you've got a different set of virtual machines that you could choose from. So you got VirtualBox, Vagrant, Hyper-V, VPC, or VMware. So what's nice is that VirtualBox is a free virtualization software you can download. So it's run by Oracle. They make it and support it. So it's an open source product. I think it's open source, but it's certainly free. VMware Player is VMware's free virtualization software. VMware, if we go to VMware and have a look at that, there they are. To find it is a challenge. You have to find VMware Player somewhere on their enormous list of things. Here it is. VM Workstation Player is down here. It used to be called Player Pro. And they have try for free, upgrade, buy online, or support. So they have a version
I've never seen that website before.
It's hard to find, but if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, they have a player somewhere on here that has a free version. Where is it? Here it is. So VMware Workstation 12 Player, free for personal use. And they have one word on this entire page that has a hyperlink to the free player. So you got to really hunt for the word. Does it even say free? So you have to do a Control F and search for the word free somewhere on this page to find this free link. But you can download Workstation 12 Player and use it on your computer for free. If I had to choose between VirtualBox and VMware on Windows, I could really go either direction. Both are very good. I think VMware is a little bit faster at running Windows. And so I'd almost choose that one by default if all I was doing with Windows. I run a lot of different operating systems in a virtual machine on my desktop, and I use both. I use a lot of VirtualBox on my computer. I'm running Mac OS 10, so I'm also running VMware's, I think it's Parallels, is the product they have on the Mac OS desktop. That's what they call it. It's not called Workstation. It's called, is it called Parallels? I need to get that right because I'll get emails. But that's the Mac one. So I kind of switch back and forth between those depending on what I'm doing. But just that one thing alone of having all of those operating systems at your beck and call that you can download anytime you want for free, and it's legit. It's legal. You can do this. They want you to. And you run them in a virtual machine on your desktop. And as long as you have enough disk space and enough memory to support this, you could have Windows XP, Windows Vista, and Windows 7 all running at the same time on your desktop if you wanted to do it that way, so that you can go from one command line to the other and see what the differences are between all those operating systems.
That's amazing.
And you can't screw anything
That's
up with your
awesome.
own machine. You can go into the recovery console. You can change things in the registry. You can change the BCD edit program and change your boot configuration data. You could try breaking it and see if you can fix it. And all you have to do is just recover back to the original image, and you're back running Windows again. So it's a great way to test and train and do all these things for your exam. I think it's a good first step before you might go to something like a formal lab to set these things up, like a Windows would be for the GTS Learning Labs, for instance. It's a good place to go just before that. So that makes sense for me, and it's a good way to save some money, I think. I think are you still there, Chris? Did I lose Chris? I guess is the question. I might have hung up. My Skype may have hung up. It did hang up. So hang on, Chris, and I will call back in here. What happened there? Let's find out, everybody. Let's call him back. There we go. And we'll finish. Chris is still on the line, waiting for me.
Host and call screener.
You're welcome.
Please enter your...
I will do that right now if I can remember it. This is the challenge of live television. Oh, that was not good.
Enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Okay, we're turning it way down for that, because I know you people.
You are now in the host
There we
room.
go. And Chris
Manage
dropped
your
off.
callers
That's
from the
okay.
call-in studio web interface.
That's but I appreciate him calling. I think we talked through that one pretty well. So that gives you at least an idea. VirtualBox, in the chat room, they're going, I don't have a way to get into the BIOS of VirtualBox. That's true. I mean, there is a BIOS, obviously, because it's starting up the operating system, but you don't have access to it in VirtualBox. It's all done through the VirtualBox configuration settings, so it's not a traditional BIOS. Whereas VMware, it gives you the option to kind of press F2 or whatever the key is to pop up that traditional legacy BIOS to play around with it. But it still doesn't have a UEFI BIOS, which is what you will need to know for the 900 series. We'll have to figure something else out for that one, won't we? What are we going to do for that piece? I don't know. We'll have to figure that one out. And if you have Windows 8, Windows 10, Hyper-V is a great solution for that too. It's Microsoft's own virtualization software, and it's exceptionally well done. It's very well done. Go figure. The folks who wrote Windows, it runs Windows really, really well for that piece. So that is one. The lines are still open for those of you that are calling in. We've got some folks that have called back in after that. So let's go back to those calls. The 559 area code. Are you there, caller?
Hello, sir.
Hey, who's calling? What's your name?
Hello, sir. My name is Susan. How are you?
Hey, thanks for calling. What can we do for you today?
Thank you. I have one question.
Sure.
I have all materials for studying. I have the GTS book, and I'm watching your videos. It's very helpful for me.
Great.
And I have your PDF. Is this another material I can use it for completing studying this for this exam?
Yeah, it's a good question because there are so many different ways to do this. And one thing that I always recommend is that people should use as many different resources as they can. I think having my videos available is great. Getting a book, you mentioned you had the GTS Learning book. I used the GTS Learning book to make my videos. I really like the GTS Learning book because of that. It's just perfectly designed. It tells you exactly what you need to know, and it doesn't go beyond that particular scope, which is what I'm looking for when I'm trying to study for a certification. You know, it's nice to know a lot of different things, but I'm really looking for what I need to know to pass my cert. I think the other piece that is useful and important is to have the some sample questions. GTS Learning provides a lot of sample questions with their book, so that's good. There are a number of different books that provide sample questions. If I had to choose one for the A+, I would choose the Exam Cram Sample Questions book. And this may be one that you can find at your library. You may be able to find it other places as well. I'll go here on Amazon so I can show you. Exam Cram is a brand or a series of different certification books. There are Exam Cram books for everything, not just IT, but there are Exam Cram books for nursing. There's Exam Cram books for management certifications. There's a lot of different kind of Exam Cram. The one I'm speaking about specifically is an Exam Cram that is for the 22801 and 22802, and it's called Practice Questions. There's also an Exam Cram 22801 and 802 that is just a normal book that you would study. This one is just sample questions. That's all it is tons of practice questions, which I love that idea. So if I had to go through and see if I really understood all of these things that I was learning from my book and from the videos, do I really know it? This would be a good way to go into that piece to see, I do know this information. So you may want to consider either using a formal practice question book, or you may want to find perhaps even sample questions on the internet, although those sample questions tend to be a much lower quality. And I found that they aren't always either correct in how they are asking the question or correct in the answer that they're choosing. I tend to trust one of these practice questions books a little bit more than that. Does that make some sense?
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm starting studying this GTS Learning book. Yeah. My question is, should I stop for every details I read, or just information? I use it just information for me for part of the exam.
I think you're best set when you're trying to figure out what should I really be learning here, and going through these pieces of content. How am I going to know this information, and what should I do with it? And the detail you should know. I would absolutely go and let me find them. Go get the exam objectives. If you go to professormesser.com/objectives, and I'm going to bring my objectives up on the screen, you will have an exact list of what you need to know. So here, for instance, is the 220-801 exam, and there are very specific sets of what you need to know. Just go through this list. I'm going to scroll, and here's the list. Configure and apply BIOS settings. I need to know how to install firmware upgrades and flash the BIOS. I need to understand BIOS component information such as the RAM, the hard drive, the optical drive, the CPU. I need to understand BIOS configuration such as configuring the boot sequence, enabling and disabling devices, the date and time, and you get the idea. It tells you exactly what you need to know. So go through this list and use it as a checkbox. It's going to be one of the best things you can do to give yourself a sanity check over whether you really know the material or whether you don't. And that may be the best way to know if you're ready to take the exam as well.
I'm doing that. Okay, Professor. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for
For
calling. I
helping.
appreciate it. Thanks for watching as well. That's you're on the absolutely the right path. No question. Let's keep the calls going. Let's go to the 330 area code. And who's on the phone? Are you there?
It's Chris.
Hey,
I'm back.
Hey, he's back. See, you lost me, but now you're back as well. Hopefully you were catching the end of that last bit of the conversation we were having. Did you have a follow-up?
No, I just wanted to thank you for the question you answered and all the awesome things you've done for, people who want to say. I do have another question.
Sure.
However, how would I go about creating the situations?
Oh,
to,
yes. The performance-based questions, they call them, right?
Yeah.
These are a bit of a challenge. CompTIA doesn't give people a lot of guidance on what a performance-based question is going to look like, but they have provided a video on their YouTube channel. CompTIA, and I always don't get this. Somebody always puts it into the chat room before I can even find it. And I usually will search for it. It's called Taking a CompTIA Exam. And they give you this horrible, you probably can't hear the horrible music because I've set up so that you can't hear it. But the CompTIA exam video on how to take a CompTIA exam takes you through the entire experience of what the exam looks like. It tells you that you're normally going to be doing multiple response questions, but you could be asked fill in the blank. They might give you drag and drop questions. They might give you, here's one that has a picture you have to look at, and then what they call performance-based questions, which in some cases are simulations. So they will show you very clearly in that video, here's what you need to know to take these exams and do something with it. And I think that's a good way to work with these and figure out what they're going to ask. Now, the specifics of what they ask are something completely different. There are a number of resources out on the internet have given some examples of what some of these might be, but you can almost think yourself what some of them could be. So I'll give you one. I will just make a performance-based question out of the air. Put these particular interface speeds in order from the slowest to the fastest. USB 1.1, FireWire, and Gigabit Ethernet. So now you have to put in order what those three things are from the lowest to the fastest. Now, in that particular example, I think I gave you the exact lowest to fastest, but I could give you 5 or 6 different interfaces and now expect you to put them in a particular order. So it really is asking you the same information you were learning for your multiple choice questions, but it's asking you the information in a different way and having you provide the answer in a different way. Ultimately, it's exactly the same content. It's just you need to figure out different ways to answer the question that's being posed of you. And that can throw people sometimes.
Gotcha.
I think that's a good one to work on. There are a number of resources I've seen with GTS Learning and some other books where they try to focus more on performance-based questions, and I need to do more of that as well. I need to write more performance-based pop quiz questions and have people do that. So this week I will do that. I will write a new performance-based question and we'll stick it in there Thursday or Friday and have people try that as well so that you can start thinking in that other way of answering a question on the same content that you've already learned about.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris. Good luck with that. Let us know how it goes.
Thank you.
Take care. There's a lot to go through on the A+. So there's so many different things they could be asking from performance-based. It could be asking you all about command line information, or it could be asking other things as well. So we never know exactly what that might turn into. Let's go to 910 area code. Are you there, caller?
Yes, sir. Hi, Professor. How's it going?
Hey, who's calling? What's your name?
My name is Lewis.
Hey, Lewis. Thanks for calling.
No problem. First off, of course, as everybody, I want to thank you for all the services you've given us. It's definitely helped me professionally and personally.
That's great. You're
So
quite
I want
welcome.
to say thank you for that.
Very welcome.
So I was calling in today. I'm hoping you can kind of give me a little bit of guidance here. So a little bit of background. I worked at like 2 different help desks in the past 3 years. Over the summer, all of our goal is usually to go from a help desk to like a desk side place. I ended up getting employed at a law firm, and it was kind of like a IT specialist thing. You go to the desk, you make repairs and such.
Sure.
But I was also somewhat of a network administrator. We had 2 separate virtual machines over 2 different networks. Now, the network administration part of it, I really excelled at, and the IT part I actually excelled at, and I loved it, and I learned a lot. Unfortunately, I was recently terminated because they needed someone that was more into legal scripting rather than IT, and I really just wasn't into legal scripting.
Right.
So I'm kind of in a place now to where it's a little difficult because I haven't gotten any certifications as of yet. But I excel at what I do. It's just I'm not sure where to go from here because I'm really interested in IT, and I think that I'm decent at it. And my dream job as of right now is to continue with network administration, but I'm not really sure where to go from here.
Well, you certainly got some solid experience to fall back on. And I'm sad to hear that you had that experience with the legal firm. IT in a legal organization has its own set of challenges associated with it. And I've worked with a lot of different law firms and law companies, large legal companies, legal firms in the past. And it's tough because their business is about their billable hours. And and a huge part of what they're doing is around technology and being able to send information back and forth to clients, but you aren't perceived as a direct profit center for the organization. So it becomes a little bit more of a challenge when they try to start figuring out your value in the organization. Unfortunately, some law firms are right on the money. They understand the importance of the technology. Others are more focused in billable hours. And that's just an unfortunate part of that particular segment of the market. But the good part, let's look at the positives. You have some very practical experience with technology. And that is a valuable thing when you go talk to other companies, especially when it comes to moving up to other parts of IT. And also, one thing that's kind of nice in your particular case is you found a particular niche that interests you. And I think that's also important because that's how it works. When I started with my first job out of college, it was working at a computer store and effectively delivering printer cables, and then moved from that to upgrading people's systems, then moved from that to a corporate help desk environment, and then moved from a corporate help desk environment to more of a consultative role and design role with networking within that company because I saw a network set up and thought, tell me more about these routers and these hubs and these servers and how they all work together, and really got into the packets a lot. And that's where I started moving off and away from operating systems and more into networking, and eventually from networking into security. So I love that you have that in your head, that you're like, okay, now I know where I want to go with this. So you've got some real valuable things behind you. Now it's more about finding the opportunity wherever it happens to be. And
Right.
now you're going to have to use something other than technology to do this. You can, of course, do the normal thing where you're taking your resume, you're sending it to people, but they don't know who you are. They have no clue about any of those pieces. But I guarantee you that in your particular area, there's probably a technology group. It may be one that is focused on Microsoft. It may be one that is focused on Cisco. It may be one that's focused on VMware, or it may be one that's just a overall general technology group that meets. These are great places to meet people and especially meet potential employers. I think that's a great place to go to meet. The one very common organization that does this kind of thing that's more focused. I'm trying to remember their exact names of some of the more generic ones. I was on the security side, so it was the ISSA, which was more of a general security association group. But one thing you may want to do is check your the meetup. There's a good site to go to find where people are meeting in your area. And a lot of these technology organizations will go to Meetup and post their meeting information so that you can go meet them. Even if they aren't hiring, there's usually an opportunity you can sit around with people and ask them, when you hire people for a role in network management or network administration, kind of entry level in your organization, what skills are you looking for? And they can tell you, oh, we need a minimum of this Cisco certification or this Microsoft certification or this particular set of experiences. And once you start learning who these people are and seeing them at these meetings and asking these very specific questions of them, you start to know them and their organization. And when they have an opening, they may go, you know what? There's a guy in my group that I go to at the meeting. He is someone who's looking to be in this very specific role, because people are much more apt to hire from somebody they know than somebody that just comes off the street and they got to figure it out on their own. I think the people networking part of this is something we don't do enough of, and I think it can provide you with some very valuable relationships, not just for hiring and finding another job, but just for finding out what other people are doing in their organization. You can learn a lot just by asking, what do you do for this particular issue? And you'll get a huge, people love to tell the story. Sit down at a lunch and find out what they do and how that works for them. It's really remarkable.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. I'll definitely look into that. Unfortunately, I'm from North Carolina, but I'm located in Michigan.
Okay.
And Michigan was where my job was, so I'm kind of stuck until I can go home, I guess, or I'm hoping to do. But I still feel like there's gaps in things that I know. Like, unfortunately, I put a lot of work into the network administration part of it, so much that the legal aspect really kind of lacked, and I wasn't interested in it anyways. I came in there with just basic help desk knowledge, and by the time before I left, I was able to rewire the entire office with multiple switches and make everything look a lot nicer. And overall, I think it was a lot beneficial to the office compared to my predecessor, but I still feel like there's a lot that I'm missing in my own abilities.
Well, don't miss an opportunity as well. Depending on where you go from a geographical perspective, the strategy is still the same. Find the people that do this kind of thing and latch on to them. People are always looking for someone who's willing to learn those pieces. Maybe it's not at a corporation. It might be at a service provider for a corporation. There are a lot of service providers that handle installing and maintaining Windows operating systems for their clients, or that handle doing networking for their clients. And those value-added resellers of networking equipment, you may find a local Cisco certified value-added reseller or gold partner or silver partner or platinum partner or whatever they call them these days. And that partner is always looking for somebody to help out with these projects that are coming along. That's also a great place to learn those pieces. And you said something that really resonated with me. You said there were gaps in your knowledge. Here's the secret. There's gaps in all of our knowledge. Everybody has gaps in their knowledge. So what I would recommend doing, and this is really for everybody, find the niche that interests you. If networking is your thing, Find out everything there is to know about this networking piece. Dive into how the packets go across the network. Find out more about what's required for a Cat5 versus a Cat6 punchdown. Find out if I was going to implement DNS, what programs I can use to do that and what's involved. Should I spin up my own Linux machine and try loading up these different proxies and see if I can get those to work? There's an infinite number of things that you could be working on that would help you learn more about what's going on with that particular piece, because at some point somebody's going to need somebody to work for them who knows how to do this thing. And because you've spent so much time at the packet level and you understand how ARP works, that you could really get into that piece. I mentioned that specifically because I worked for a networking startup, a network security startup that eventually went public. And during this phase, we were hiring people, and we were the highest end network security product you can think of. In fact, today, one of the best, most modern, most advanced security devices on the market. And the first thing we'd ask people in a meeting with an interview, we'd ask them, tell me about ARP. And it's remarkable how people who are interviewing for a very technical position could not tell me one of the most fundamental things about the way networks operate. So it's one of those where you can really tell who's really done their work at that level. And if you can find somebody who really gets it, they get the network piece and they're excited about the network piece and they understand how these things all work together, and they're naturally curious when something isn't working the way you would expect, what's going on there, and they know how to find out, that's the kind of people that are worth hiring. So don't dismiss your lack of knowledge as being a disadvantage. What you don't know is actually what drives you to what you will eventually know, and people want people like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that is definitely an excellent point. So would you recommend me moving just straight on into like Network Plus or into the CCNA? I'm not sure, kind of where to go from here. Because as I said, I'm kind of in between jobs right now, and the way it looks like is I may have to go back to a help desk environment, which is what I really don't want. But until I can get to where I need to be, I'm not sure, where to go with that part of it.
It's all strategic, isn't it? You now have to make a plan, whatever that plan happens to be. And I do have skin in the game because I have a training course for Network Plus, but I'm also sensitive to your particular situation. So I would ask you to look at what people are hiring for. And maybe your strategy is to get to a help desk, but during the interview process with these companies, go work at a help desk or a company that's large enough to have a big networking group, a big server team, a big set of projects that are going to be coming along over the next 12 months. And find out, look at what they're putting in their job postings right now. So find the top 10 companies that you think you would like to work for. Go to the Monsters of the world or go to their own career pages and find the openings that say, here's a help desk position, here's a network position, here is a server administration position, whatever it happens to be. See what they're asking for. If their network administration is asking very specifically for a Cisco CCNA, then this is what I need to go working towards. Maybe I'll skip over the Network Plus and go straight to Cisco. But if you're looking at some jobs where it's a entry-level network role and they're looking for Network Plus, well, then maybe you'll shift your gears and go after the Network Plus certification. It's in your particular position, it really does need to be that strategic because you're working on a limited time frame. You need to be very laser focused on what your next step is going to be. So you need to do a lot of research right now to figure out and make an educated decision about what the next 3 steps are going to be, and then plan it out. It's not going to be your next job. Plan for the next job, but also plan in that job, how do I go to the next thing I want to do? Maybe it is going back to help desk, but you can even say in the help desk interview, I'd love to work in your help desk, but in 6 months, I'd love to be with your network team. Can we put together a plan that will get me there? And they'll go, no, we don't do that. I'm like, okay, I know I'm not going to work for you. Or they'll say, yeah, in fact, we've had people in the past, we've done exactly that, and there might be a love connection there. So that's how you should approach it, is think like a chess player. You should be 3 or 4 steps ahead and figure out what it's going to be. Because I will tell you, if you in your mind figure out where you want to be, it's crazy. You actually get there. That is how it works in IT, and there's no other vertical market or vertical set of jobs that you can have in the world that give you more of an opportunity than technology. So it's really up to you to figure out where you want to go with those pieces and do it. And I think in a way, I'm sorry to hear that you were laid off, but in a way, you've got a lot of opportunity ahead of you.
Right. Okay. Well, that's excellent, Professor. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I mean, you're really providing a service for us. So, I mean, really, thank you for that.
Thanks, Lewis. Good luck, and keep me posted on how things are going.
Oh, of course. I'll be in the chat, and I'll be in every study group you have. Don't worry.
Sounds good. We will see you there then. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Take
Goodbye.
care. All right, we're getting well into the second hour now, and my voice is still working. So let's keep going with this. I do have a call. We'll do at least one more call, and then I do at some point need sustenance. We'll make that happen. The 530 area code. Are you there, caller?
Yes, I am.
Hey, what's your name?
My name is John.
Hey, John. Thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
All right. Hold on just a minute.
Yeah, you may want to turn that stream down.
I got to turn the sound off on the speakers.
That's too much of me at one time.
All right. Okay, I had a couple of questions and a statement, and I make the statement first. You were talking about Linux distributions and stuff earlier.
Yes.
And I just wanted to point out for those folks who want to have some idea of what Linux distributions are out there, they might want to go to www.distrowatch.com and take a look. There's a lot of distros out there.
There are tons, and that's a great site too, by the way. That's an excellent suggestion, and that's where I go to get my list of distributions. And their big list also tells you the ones that are the biggest distributions and how popular they are. So if you're trying to figure out, is this a good use of my time, this is a great place to go.
Yeah, I run LXLE on my home theater PC. So
Perfect. Makes sense.
Okay. So along those lines, well, I know you haven't seen the questions or objectives or anything like that. But as regards the Linux portion of the new A+ tests that are going to be coming out. Just how generic do you think that those questions might possibly be because of all the Linux distributions out there?
Well, I can tell you that I have indeed gone through in quite a bit of detail all of the 901 and 902 exam objectives. So I've gone through the entire thing. I've quite literally mind mapped it out. I've compared it to the previous versions. I've done drawn lines between them. This is a pretty important part of what I do. So I have gone through this with a lot of detail, and I will tell you that that the Mac and the Linux pieces on this exam are not as in depth as the Windows pieces. On the Windows side, you have to know how to install it. There's a lot of time that's being spent on the recovery modes. There's a lot of effort being spent on command line restructures and troubleshooting. On the Linux and the Mac OS side, it is not quite as detailed. You don't need to know how to install a Linux implementation. They don't go into how you would choose your partition types, for instance, with Linux. You know, that's your first part where you're scratching your head when you're installing your first Linux, is it prompts you, how do you want to set up the partitions? You're like, what are you talking about? I don't know. I click the button that says do it for me, and I hope that's the best. That you don't even get into that piece on the 902 exam. What they've really focused on is a much higher view of the world where it's already been installed for you. Now, how do you support it? The basic Linux commands, or the Linux commands they give you on the certification, are literally called basic Linux commands. So it is from the top: ls, grep, cd, shutdown, cp, mv, rm. So it's the things you use every day. But then they get into some things maybe you don't use every day, like iwconfig and ifconfig. It gets into ps, but they don't tell you how deep to go to ps. PS is a list of the processes that are running on your Linux machines for those that are listening. And you can get into some very detailed command lines for PS just from that one command. You have to know the difference between su and sudo. You have to be able to use apt-get. although Yum is not in this list, interestingly enough. And they even have DD as one of the commands you need to know. That's a pretty big list of Linux commands, but none of them are super advanced. And interestingly enough, it's exactly the same list of commands you would run on a Mac command line as you would a Linux command line because of the similarities between those operating systems. So in some ways, it's easy between those two. The troubleshooting part, if you go to the fourth domain, because you can download these right now and have a look when you get off this call, is they do go through trying to troubleshoot Linux. A good example is you're missing Grub or you're missing Lilo. You had a kernel panic. Those are things very specific to a Linux or a Mac OS X. But that's about it. That's about as deep as they get into troubleshooting those operating systems. They talk about the pinwheel in Mac OS, but that's it. They don't really go into much more detail than those pieces. So it is a very high level. You can load up any Linux distribution and you'll have everything you need to know to troubleshoot Linux for the A+ exam. So that at least it's generic enough you can do that, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So fortunately, we don't have to spend a lot of time figuring out what distribution do I need. Is this something I need Red Hat? Should I instead install Ubuntu? You don't have to worry about it. Install anything you got. Whatever you can find, install it. You'll be fine. So that helps.
Okay. And then the last thing before I go, I was looking through the various exams on the CompTIA site, and a while ago, because I'm in between opportunities as well, like the previous caller, I noticed a certification for the A+ healthcare certificate. That seems pretty specific.
It is, yeah.
And I was wondering how prevalent or how much would you advise studying that if you needed to get in, if you were trying to get into like a hospital IT situation, or would a regular A+ be enough?
It is the healthcare IT healthcare IT certification from CompTIA has a little bit of an interesting history because it was released as just a standard certification, but it really didn't catch on very well. And CompTIA announced about a year ago, maybe just over a year ago, and said, you know what, at the end of 2014, we're just going to retire this. And got such a number of healthcare professionals saying, wait a second, don't get rid of this because we find this is a really valuable certification, that they changed their mind and said, okay, we're not going to retire this. So it went from being a dead certification to suddenly not being retired. And it's been here all year long. CompTIA said we're not retiring it now, ever, it seems. And it seems to have got a little bit of steam behind it. So it's one of these certifications that would not give up, that it just stayed there and people have latched onto it. The question, of course, is going to be, do the local hospitals in your area, do their IT organizations put any credence in this certification or not? And that is more of a subjective question because it's going to be different whoever you ask. But this is one of those opportunities you have to find the people that work there and reach out to them and ask them about this. And that's something I recommend that people do. The people that work in the CIO position, the positions of management within IT within these organizations, they're out there. Their email address is out there. They're often on these websites for the companies, or you can access their information on LinkedIn. It's worth sending them an email saying, I've been looking at your organization. I really like what you guys are doing. You're local in my particular area. I have some skills in IT that are interesting. What types of things are you looking for to hire? Do you like the CompTIA's healthcare IT certification? Do you prefer the A+? Do you prefer somebody getting something that's specific to a manufacturer like a Microsoft or a Cisco? And they'll very often tell you exactly what type of thing they're looking for. Because the healthcare IT has gotten a little bit of steam behind it, I think that hospitals are starting to catch on with that because there's a lot of things, especially with healthcare that are so healthcare specific. The Mrs. Professor Messer is a registered nurse, and she knows that hospitals are their own little cities. They have their own way of doing things. They have very specific rules and requirements that are based around keeping people alive, which are it's incredibly important. And from a technology perspective, keeping people's data protected, which is now a huge mandate with the HIPAA laws that are out there. So the healthcare IT goes into a lot of these things because you have, think of the challenges you have in a hospital. There's one computer and you have 10 nurses that use that one computer. How do you authenticate in and out all these people that are showing up? When they show up in front of that computer, how do you know it's them? Are they typing in a username and password every time? No, they're not. That would take forever for everybody. Do they remember to log out? No, of course not. So how do you log them out automatically? How do you get them access to the internet and give them access to the things they need from a healthcare perspective, but prevent them from going to sites that could potentially infect? How do you manage keeping data safe and encrypted? That's a whole different world of things. How do you keep a network up and running so that that people are able to get the medicines they need? And if there's a downtime, how do you work around those things? Those are problems in healthcare that are very different than if you're working in shipping and receiving. Here at Messer Studios, there's not a lot of life-saving things I need to worry about. If my network goes down, I can't surf Reddit. That's as bad as it gets for me. Nobody's going to die. But in healthcare, it's a very different thing, and they take that extremely seriously, and well, they should. The networks that I have seen with healthcare over the last year have been amazing in their scope and their breadth. The bandwidths are amazing. The amount of storage is on these networks is incredible. Now everything's being imaged. It's 3D imaging. The requirements have gone through the roof. It's a great time to get into healthcare with IT. You just have to find out what they're looking for. That was a very long and involved answer to a very simple question, but hopefully it's giving you some perspective.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time, Professor, and I appreciate the class, and I guess I'll hop out from the next caller.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
But thank you for answering that.
Absolutely. Take care and good luck. That's I tell you, just some of even the smaller what you would think was a small hospital in my regional area have just incredible infrastructures in place. It's like nothing you've ever seen for an organization that size, because it needs it with those pieces. So that's yes, the chat room is already getting a little freaked out over me using HIPAA and being able to do that. It's a little bit of a challenge, though, isn't it, to be able to do those pieces? All right, well, that has brought us to the end of 2.5 hours. We did a little over 2.5 hours of a study group. That one was pretty involved. So I want to thank everyone for joining. Just a reminder for everybody, we're doing another one of these on the 4th, just a few weeks away. We just did this one. And now, so it's not exactly 1 month later. We're going to be doing this a little bit earlier in the month of November, just for Thanksgiving. And we'll do it a little earlier in December as well, so we can work through the holiday season and make sure that everybody's going to be available to watch. I want to thank everybody for being here today. We would not be able to do these study groups if you weren't here and following along with what we're doing. Thanks, everybody, for your calls. Thank you, chat room, for being there and being the part of my brain that wasn't thinking properly today, and for the questions. And we will see you next month on the A+ Study Group. Thanks, everyone.